All right, I would like to welcome everyone to the Provo Municipal Council work session meeting for Tuesday, July 19th, June 19th, 2018. Thank you very much. It is now 12:17, and we are meeting in the Provo City Center conference room. And I'd like to call the meeting to order, and would like everyone to know that this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Provo City Council, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. Be aware that the microphones in the room pick up the noise of paper and other rustling objects. Further, be aware that microphones can pick up side conversations. We will begin with a roll call. Let's start with Mr. Jones.
Brian Jones. George Hanley.
David Mack.
David Hurry.
Dave Sewell.
Bryce Mumford.
George Short.
Excellent. We are expecting to have Mr. Winterton call in at some point, and we're also looking for Mr. Van Buren to join us shortly. We would like to note the absence of our executive director, Cliff Stratton, who is excused due to family circumstances. And we will begin with an opening prayer provided by Mr. Bryce Mumford.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for this day that we have to meet together, and we're grateful for our municipal council and elected leaders and for the time and effort and energy that they put into making decisions and seeking input for what is best for Provo City. We are grateful for the privilege which we have to live in this land, for the freedoms and comforts which we enjoy. We ask a blessing on those who are not with us, and those who are struggling or have trials and who are otherwise afflicted. We ask that thou bless them and help them to feel thy comfort and peace. We're grateful for the many blessings which we feel and are blessed with by living in this community. We pray that thou will help us be guided by the Spirit, and we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right. Before we proceed with the agenda, I would like to remind those in attendance that although this is a public meeting, only the presenters and those seated at the council table may speak or ask questions unless otherwise allowed by, in this case, the vice chair, as have been asked to conduct this meeting. First item of business, we have set aside 30 minutes for a discussion on tax increment funding. At a previous work session, we had an excellent presentation by Mr. Dixon Holmes discussing some of the nuts and bolts of tax increment funding and some of the policies and principles behind that, and some history, as well as what may be upcoming. We asked after that, we decided we would like to have some time set aside for just a more general discussion from council members. We're grateful that Mr. Holmes is here and can answer questions. And make comments as things come up. The intended outcome is just, I guess it's just for the discussion, and perhaps we could even make a motion if we feel like we kind of settle on policy, but I imagine most of this will be just discussion. I was not expecting to be chairing when this item came to back to council, but if it's all right with everyone, I'd like to maybe lead out with a couple arguments and maybe get this discussion on that way. Elizabeth, can you help me with the screen? So, yeah, just.
Just on screen control, yeah, and then click the up arrow.
So one of the best examples, best arguments for tax increment financing that I've heard. Imagine you have a generic city, and in this generic city, you may have an area, kind of commercial node that's doing very well, very vibrant, attracting good rents, has good sales tax. It's a very inviting place, a great place where people enjoy shopping. And let's say you have another area that's more run down, a lot of vacancies in the shops, isn't producing a lot in terms of sales tax or property taxes. And you have a new store that's coming into the area. Now the store likely would want to be, well, they may have to pay higher rents or whatever, but they may want to there's an advantage for being in this vibrant area. They're going to come in, they're going to benefit from what's around them, and then they're also going to be contributing to what's around and adding to the vitality and the vibrance and the energy that's already there. So that's that. For this example, that's where it makes most sense for them to go. Now, the city, the community might say, well, that's great. You can go here and you'll be highly successful. That'll be great. You'll increase our sales tax or whatnot. But you're such a good draw on your own. If we could get you to come in here, now you're bringing some new energy, some new life to this area, and it may help spur some redevelopment and could help turn this from a negative area into a positive area. And the bump in sales tax and the bump in property taxes from doing that is going to far exceed what's already, you would have a bump here, but it would be less because things are already going well here. If we could get some more life and help redevelop some rundown areas, then that's going to be a huge asset, a huge benefit to the community. So is there a way that we can incentivize, that we can make it so it's a win-win situation, so we can make it even more attractive for you to be here than to be here? Because in the long run, that's going to be in the best interest of the whole city. So to me, this is an example of, this is an ideal use of tax increment financing, where we're addressing why and we're getting a company to do something that may not be in their best interest without the incentive, but with the incentive, it's in their best interest and it's in the best interest. Another way that tax increment financing is sometimes used, so now let's say this is a valley-wide scope, and you've got multiple jurisdictions, multiple cities within this valley. And let's say a new store, Acme TNT company has decided, probably not a commercial, but imagine a retail, Acme clothing store outlet has decided, they've done a market study, they said, we want to be somewhere in this valley. We want to expand this market. Maybe they do a market study and they say, here are kind of the prime locations, but we'd be good there and there. So those are the areas that are our first choice, kind of our second choice, where we want to be. And let's say that they've decided that they want to locate here, but maybe a friend, a cousin of someone knows they're going there, and they say to this community, hey, they're going here, but you could probably get them here if you could incentivize it, give them some tax increment. And so now this city decides, okay, we're going to offer tax increment. And so this company decides, instead of moving here, I shouldn't have drawn it on the border, instead of moving into this city, they're going to move into this city because of the tax increment finances. So who wins in this situation? Well, this city wins. This city really loses out. County-wide, though, kind of valley-wide, the people who live here, doesn't really make a difference to them to drive to here or to drive to there. No real tax revenues are being generated because it would have been here. It's generated for this city. It's not being generated for this city, but for like the county taxes, there's really no difference. And if you look at it from the county's perspective, if the county's participating in a tax increment in this scenario, I mean, that makes, in my opinion, 0 sense, because they're giving money and it's not actually moving at one, it's still locating. And you can imagine as this plays out, the next time someone comes in, now this city says, oh, we're not going to lose out. Again, we're going to offer the same incentives. When one is doing it, they have a huge advantage over everyone, and they can really pull stuff in. But as this does it now this one's not as big of a draw because now 2 are offering it, and some of them may go there, some of them may go there. But pretty soon, more and more start saying, well, we're going to offer it too. And we get down to the point where everyone's offering it but 1 or 2 places. Now it's not really an advantage for any of them. They're not they were attracting 1 out of 8 before, if everyone was roughly equal, and now they're attracting 1 out of 7. So it's a slightly higher attraction rate. But now that one city that doesn't participate, it's now a big negative for them rather than being and really not a positive for anyone. And if everyone offers the same incentives, which is close to where we're at now, so maybe it's not the same incentives. But if everyone's offering it, there's really not an attraction for anyone. But what's the difference between no one offering it and everyone offering it? The difference is the taxes that would normally be generated and used to fund services are being returned to the company. There's a lot of assumptions here. There's an assumption that, a company's going to come one way or another. Maybe this could accelerate by a couple of years. A company accelerates it because they can get this. So I'm not saying this is the situation in all cases, but when I think about tax increment financing, I see some really good uses, and I see, to me, some very cautionary things, some negatives when we get to this point. And I'm fearful that we're very close to this, where companies understand that they have this leverage, and instead of being something that allows them to do something that they wouldn't otherwise do, or do something that really benefits the community, it's just a step in the process. Okay, well, it's been X number of years since we renovated last time. Let's renovate again, and we've got to go out and get bids. We need to hire an architect. We need to go out and ask for tax increment finance. It's just a checkbox that it's just part of the standard operating procedure, and we got to do.
One thing you perhaps didn't cover in your model is it's not just people in different communities offering incentives to new businesses that might relocate. It's offering enticements to take businesses from one community to get them into their community. And when that happens continually, I think the community that loses repeatedly gets a little sensitive.
Yeah, and yes, and I think that's where we're at. We've got this one kind of here saying, well, we're not going to give away the taxes that part of the social contract is businesses pay taxes and help fund the services that they receive as well as their customers receive. And so when we're in this situation, we're at a very distinct disadvantage because everyone else is offering it, and if we're not on a level playing field. So one thing to do is just join everyone. Another possibility, and I'm done now, but one possibility would be to reach out and talk about this and see if we wanted to coordinate somewhat on a county level and say and try to avoid this, because even the communities that are doing this, that are offering them, they may feel like they're being like they're being pressured to do it as well, and being threatened that, hey, if you guys stop getting these kind of things, then we're going to go somewhere else. And so we may be able to get some coordination, some cooperation, so we get the tool to be used a little bit more like this and a little bit less like this.
Just one more observation is, as I see things happening in the county, whether it be in war or Spanish Fork, I'm not sure if they have any regrets. I think currently they look at their successes and are happy with what they've done and what they're doing, and probably aren't too interested in changing how their MO, how they do things.
And I think that's a good conversation to have with them, because I don't know, I do know there was some angst in Orem when Nordstrom's decided to pull out on like the moment that their tax increment financing ended. And so that would be a good question. They may also be saying that we may be realizing they're getting less return on their investment as more and more join the field and are willing to offer the same things, that they're getting less and less return on this large investment. And so they may be saying, well, it was a great thing while we were the only ones doing it, but now that everyone's willing to do it, maybe it makes sense to see if we can all just, in some ways it's like an arms race. Now we're just saying, let's put a little arms control. We're not saying we don't use it anymore, but if we all agree to back off together, and we can disrupt the balance. But
Of course, it's not just businesses. We've seen incentives for housing.
yes. Yep. I would have to think about that quite a bit. I'm not ready to jump in on that, but yeah, it's just thinking mostly retail is what I'm thinking. That's what I had in mind when I was thinking about this stuff. But yeah, good point.
I think it's a great idea to have that conversation with the other cities. It may be challenging if there are cities who feel like they have an advantage. They may be reluctant to go to a different model, but I think it's worth trying and exploring.
I kind of think the first model where you're trying to use an incentive to upgrade or the enthusiasm in a blighter or sawyer, I think that has the less chance of ever using, because most companies are not going to say, okay, we got this company want to be successful, so we're going to go in the poor area. We're going to go in the worst location because they're giving us money. I don't think very many of them start out, you have to be a large incentive or I don't know. I can see how the model works, but I can't see a company coming and just starting right from the beginning.
Was Ross a little bit like that? I mean, was East Bay, and again, it may not be like a slum area or whatever, but it's, yeah, an East Bay that's just, that needs maybe a little bit of a boost. It's getting a little bit run down and is looking for a little bit more investment.
I think Ross chose their location because that's what was available. They didn't want to go out and build a 30,000 square foot freestanding building. Frankly, trying to think in my mind right now, we probably, other than the Smith's property, and they're probably not willing to sell to Ross, there probably isn't a place in town where they could do that. It was actually for sale. Now, possibly at the Mix. I know the Mix would maybe have liked them in there, but it'd be pretty close to the other Ross up on the Parkway. There's probably a number of factors as to why they chose that location. Proximity to the mall, freeway.
Should have mentioned the time that we had for this item. We have had it scheduled for 30 minutes. We're going to really try to stay on top of our time. We've got some things in the closed meeting we need to address. So, but I have no problem ending early. Are there any other points that? Okay.
I can just,
Yeah, please.
I got 10 minutes, I'll take it. So I welcome the discussion, appreciate your willingness to have this conversation, and hopefully you continue to have it. Again, it was my understanding that the council wanted to have an emphasis in economic development, and particularly retail in this and subsequent years, and I welcome that. We've been working on a lot of things, as many of the other departments do, and trying to be successful with their charges. And we've obviously been trying to get some retail in our community, and part of what we were doing we didn't think was working. And so we were looking for a catalyst to make a change in that. And I think the council member has pointed out some inherent challenges with our current taxing structure, what companies move to the incentive, and where businesses locate, things like that. And so, and again, I know we said, we haven't done these for a long time, and now suddenly we've done 3 in the last 18 months, and we have another one on the agenda tonight. And I'm telling you, there's at least 2 more out there, and so we'll continue to bring you what we think is our best thinking and best practices for trying to bring retail to our community. But sit here and just wait for that phone call. We don't spend a whole lot of time waiting on the phone for someone to call us to come to our community. And the outreach that we have made, just, hey, we'd love you to come to our town because we're awesome. We got lots of blue sky, we got mountains, we got really cool people, they love to serve. We got BYU, everyone else claims the same thing, and they're probably rightfully so. They can claim the same thing. So again, we hope this is a partnership and going forward, and we very much appreciate the council's approval and facilitating what we have done so far. We think we're not there yet. We'd like to get to the point where we just tell business A, B, or C. It's like, yeah, if you want to be in Provo, that's awesome. If you don't, that's okay too. But all we have to offer is our blue sky and our great place. But until we're at that location, we think we need to do something to catalyze. And frankly, there are some that if they came to us and say, hey, we want to be in your community, how much can we get? We'd say, well, we got lots of blue sky, and if it makes sense to be here, great. And if it doesn't, then don't come. We're just not there yet. But for like a McDonald's or a 7-Eleven, probably not. Something special, something that we currently don't have, a gap in our market, yeah, we would want to have that conversation. And so we are willing to be as bold or as creative as you allow us to be. And thus far, I think you've actually helped us to be very creative and to be able to do some things that we heretofore have not been able to do, but for the opportunities, and whether you call it an incentive or an investment or.
So you don't bring us everything because you do look at the return on
No, some things happen on their own.
Right, but I mean, some things you look at it and go, this is really not in the best interest of Provo.
Or it kind of rises or falls on its own weight or merits. Yeah. So we're hoping to, again, be that catalyst to bring a tipping point.
I really appreciate the discussion, and I've so far really appreciated the information you provide for us to help us make these decisions. And I like the sort of proactive, aggressive approach. I think one of the concerns that I've felt is that the bigger the company, the bigger the name, the bigger the influence that they have, it just does worry me a little bit. I mean, it's just sort of it's the situation you want, right? You say, well, that's the kind of company you want to bring here. And yet that also gives them such an advantage in the negotiation. That just worries me a little bit. I don't really have any reason to oppose those things, but I just feel a little anxious about, allowing a large multinational corporation or a big chain that's everyone's favorite idea to bring to Provo, and then they can sort of say, we'll come, but only on our conditions. And our conditions are that a lot of the revenue that would be coming to you, we get to keep. And that just makes them more powerful, and the communities that take them more weak. And that's a bad model.
No, it's a vicious cycle, and anytime you want to get off the merry-go-round, we can stop. Because again, it's a little bit of, we're trying to quantify the risk, look at the upside, look at the downside. And on any of these, you as a council, administration, staff, we can take a hard line to say, no, this is where we're at. And this is the 3 deals that we've done so far. at least for me personally, I've been at my comfort level. I haven't gone beyond what I thought would be inordinate to
Right.
their benefit or advantage. There's always some point in the deal where it's just too rich for them and not enough for us. And I hope that we would walk away at that point. And if the council ever wants to give us that directional line, we are super open to that. Because there is no deal that's so good that you just can't walk away from it.
I'm going to go to Mr. Stewart next. I did want to make the point that this was an open discussion. We're getting close to being out of time, but this was an open discussion. I let out with a couple of points, but it wasn't necessarily a discussion about the points that I made. That was just the points that I wanted to make. So if anyone else has any points, you got it.
My first 3 years as mayor, I also was ranking on public works. So I'm a little conversant with this issue. I don't think people are going to change where they want to be based on the incentive as far as location. Location is such a critical thing that you're not going to incentivize them to, you have to almost buy them. Incentivize them enough. I don't know if that's been your experience, but location is such a critical issue to them. And incentives should be the tipping point. Often, it would not happen without the incentive. Would happen without the incentive, then you can gamble that. But also, in addition to tax revenue, it's also convenience to our citizens to have a place to shop.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think if it was an even, we always get something out of it, but if it helps citizens to buy a Taco Bell, hot goods, something, I think you can consider that also as part of quality of life in the city. And I think we should consider that. So it might not sound like the greatest deal financially, but if it's okay, brings business to the city, I think it's worthwhile doing it especially.
Any other thoughts on this topic?
Just real follow-up on that, George. Every time I have to leave Provo to go to the Good Earth in Spanish Fork or Orem, I may be tempted to spend more dollars outside of Provo. So having those things in Provo, so I don't have to leave, helps keep my tax dollars in there.
Who would do that?
With that, that's right. Yeah, I forget that clock is fast. So, hey, I don't mind me a couple minutes early. We're 2 minutes early, but with that, let's close that item, and we will move on to item 2, which is a discussion on the real estate purchase agreement and development agreement for a medical school at the golf course. And this is being presented by our own Mr. Dixon Holmes. Take it away.
We should just leave that drawing out there. Another day party. It's modern art.
Well, I might draw. Okay, I'll leave it up to the opportunity to draw. Okay, council members, administration, proceed. So the last time the council had anything officially before them was on January 9th. Since that time, there's been at least 3 sets of documents going back and forth in the form of a development agreement and a real estate purchase agreement between the developer for the medical school and with a team here at Provo City. Most recently, we have now involved our attorneys because, again, the first couple iterations were just kind of going back and trying to understand what the medical school needed, what the city needed. And we've had numerous meetings. To be really frank, I hoped, and they probably did too, that we'd be farther along at this point, but the process is challenging. And trying to get everything right and not miss anything. And we'll continue to meet some of the things that need to happen, probably more sooner than later, is the actual design of the 3 new holes. City's ready, it has been ready for that, and I'm hoping that we can get the developer and the medical school group there shortly also. In fact, there's another meeting this afternoon relative to some of those issues, the development of the new 3
holes and old 3 holes. Planning on meeting this Thursday to, again, continue to refine the contract. We've tried to keep the council in the loop to the extent that we can, recognizing that it's hard. In fact, the document that you have that was put in SIRE, that's, I think it's in your packet. We made a further iteration Thursday afternoon, giving it again back to the medical school group. And so we continue to refine that. I don't know if you have any questions or if you're getting any questions from constituents or others that I could attempt to answer. And the internal working group has been myself and Wayne Parker, Tara Riddle, our property manager, golf course, Scott, Doug, and Brett, and Dave Walter, and who have all given input back and forth. And again, the main thing that we have tried to emphasize, not tried to, but have emphasized to the school is the importance of not being able to go into the holes 10, 11, and 12 until the new holes on the Cooney property are ready and playable. That seemed to be the main thing that came out of our discussion back in January. And the time frame is going to be tight. We'll continue to see how we can facilitate that. One of the conversations is whether we seed the course or sod the course to make it more playable. Question may come up is if the holes are planted or the holes are constructed and developed and we go into the winter season and it's not playable anyway and everybody agrees, I mean, our golf pro and all the professionals, everybody agrees it's open in spring, could they go ahead and start? Or if it's no, they'll still need a couple of months in the spring for it to grow out, and we're going to have to wait that even though they could have been working, but because the holes still need a couple more months of growing in that spring, then we would say that we're going to have to wait. I know there'll be intense pressure on both sides to get this right, because this is really one of those things that you only get one chance to do, or hopefully only one chance to do that. So that's probably the most critical thing. Another thing that we're working, or item or concept we're working through, is obviously the developer is responsible for the design and the construction of the new 3 holes. And obviously our golf course is very interested in how that plays out also. We have emphasized that this will need to go out to a public bid. It is public money, or at least it's a public facility. And that is the purchase price of the holes is the replacement, and to make sure that the other portion of the golf course that's being impacted continues to function properly with all the drainage and signage and irrigation and such. Okay.
So Jason just made a statement that the developer, meaning Rocky Mountain's developer, will be doing the 3 holes.
They'll be paying.
Decided. I thought that was still a discussion point.
They are paying for the 3 holes. And I said it will be a public bid. So who the contractor?
Paying for the 3 holes, not doing.
Yeah, no. They'll be paying for, and it will need to go out to a public bid. Now, if the developer wants to submit on that, they're welcome to do that, but it will be a public process. And they are here. I don't know, Rick or John, if there's something that you wanted to.
What expanding is not correct.
Or Scott or Brett or Doug or Tara, Camille or Brian. It's a pretty good sized group. It's a little unwieldy sometimes, but so again, what I have asked, because I just get that I'm a little bit tainted on this, so I asked Camille and Brian, to the extent that they feel comfortable, to share with you at a high level kind of where they feel that we're at in the process. And that is one of the questions that I would have for the council. And we have continued to place, or not continue, it's in the agreement that the council has the ultimate approval or authorizing the mayor to sign off on this. I don't know what that looks like. If we have done 5 of these deals, I could just say this is how we've always done it, but we haven't. Certainly the documentation that we have, you are welcome to read through and digest it. And Mr. Van Buren early on had given us 2 pages on each document. And I think we've tried to accommodate those and put those, make sure those points were emphasized in the documents. But that would be one of the good questions that I think that the developer would, or the medical school would like to know is, what do you see? So if our attorneys and the administration and staff say, we think we have a document that works, the medical school, the developer says, we think we have a document that works, do you want to open up every line to public comment? Do you want to say, oh, our legal people have told us this is good, we're good now? I mean, I just don't know how that would play out.
Ryan, I thought we decided that at the council vote. The mayor could sign the agreement. Let's tell me what we voted on.
Well, I'd have to go back and look. My recollection is that with regard to the Moose Park item, we said that the agreement could just be executed after being negotiated. With this item, I think it's supposed to come back to the council. I think it's just.
Yeah, and we're prepared to do that, but that's the question, what does that look like? When we notice this, that the contract is now ready, we think the contract's now ready, the council needs to, I think, officially say, now we authorize the mayor to go ahead and sign this particular contract. How do you see that playing
That's a
out?
motion, so we're gonna make a motion to make it up. Then we vote on it. Pretty simple.
Okay, and again, that's fine, but I just want to,
Motions can be discussed, obviously, open discussion. I think you make it too complex.
okay, well, we will send you the document, and once we feel that it's final, and then we will be relying on Brian and you all just to say, yeah, we think this is.
But you're asking if in the process of approving it, we have public input on it.
No, I don't know what you want to do.
That's what I'm saying, you're asking us.
What do you want to do?
I mean, it seemed to me that, I don't know what would be wrong with that, because just in terms of public trust, it seems like a good idea to me.
I feel like we're borrowing with one. I'd be comfortable authorizing your administration to execute the agreement.
Mr. Jones, did you have a thought on what that would look like, how that process might play out?
Well, I guess, I mentioned to Dixon when he raised this earlier this week, that in the time that I've been working with council, the typical, the more common approach to this would be for the document to be completely negotiated until the administration is completely satisfied with it, and then they bring it to the council for consideration and a resolution of authorizing execution. But we haven't always done it that way. As Mr. Sewell just indicated, it's possible for the council to get to a point where they authorize execution prior to final drafts being prepared. So I guess I had anticipated, based on the last, without any direction from the council otherwise, based on the last item, that it would just be brought back when it was considered to be in final form. There's nothing about the item that requires a public hearing, but our council policy and practice and in our handbook is, at the moment, is that we open up every item for public comment, whether it's a public hearing or not. So again, I would anticipate that would happen in the normal course of business. Probably the big question, and the thing that the administration may need some guidance about, is how much of a presentation does the council want before opening it up for public comment? Is it here are the deal points and we have an agreement that discusses those, or as Dixon was talking about, do you need an in-depth kind of line-by-line review of the document in the public meeting? Or we haven't done that very often.
All right, so if I may, I believe we were just joined by Mr. Winchendon. Are you here, Mr. Winchendon?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. So we are partway through the second item on our agenda, the discussion on the real estate purchase agreement. So welcome.
Thank you.
So we just lost another council member, but I appreciate that explanation. I feel comfortable with the process that you just described. But if there is a motion, if we want to deviate from that, I guess now would be a time we could entertain that motion.
Well, I can wait for motion, then I can comment, I'll make a comment first.
Okay. Did you have a motion or comment?
I had a comment.
Okay.
Well, I was sort of, it would be a preliminary motion, but I think I would be interested in the public input. I don't think it's necessary that it's very detailed, especially if that's not the normal practice. But I just think given the nature of the public discussion that was had before and the variety of and intensity of the feelings about it, I think it's just a good gesture of public trust to do something like that. So I'm a little wary about curtailing that at this point. I just would rather, I don't want to slow it down. I mean, I understand and I trust the process. I don't mean any of that. I just think in terms of the public mood about it, it would be a good thing.
Sure.
I'm in favor of public input. Why not? Why wouldn't we do it? Because it's open discussion, no.
Okay.
My comments were meant to in any way say that we should have public input. So then we're going to have a vote, and my understanding that what we voted on before was that if it's your point, we can go ahead with it.
Okay.
So the council agreed that they would go ahead with it individually because of the deal points. But something in it that one of us isn't 100% satisfied with, but the piece of deal points we're going to vote for.
So I believe where we're at, it sounds like the consensus is there will be public comment. But to me, I guess the question is right now the default is we would wait for the contract to be, for both parties agree that this is the one that they want to propose to us, kind of the final form. Then we would consider it to be public input and vote on it. Now there's the question on, do we want to feel comfortable enough where we're at in the process just to say, we're comfortable where you're at, so go ahead and execute it. And I guess we could have that vote in the public meeting, or do we?
You're asking that question right now?
So I guess, I think the default is to go forward as Mr. Jones said, and I'm just looking if there is a proposal, a motion to deviate from that.
Can we have a discussion?
Definitely. Go ahead.
I don't know how many of you council members have read the real estate. There's two agreements. There's a real estate purchase agreement. There's a development agreement. Now, I don't have the last iteration, sounds like.
No, that was Thursday afternoon.
So my comments are based on.
Right, actually, you do have it by clear you would comment on.
Yeah, there's 15 issues in the real estate agreement. No, 9 in the real estate agreement, 15 in the purchase agreement that I don't think are consistent with what we decided on the council meeting. Okay. One very, very large one. And so I would suggest you read it.
Will you be getting those to us?
And if you'd like me to, yes.
Oh, yeah, please do that, very helpful.
And I'm going to get our meeting out from January 9th and review that and the previous meeting. Because I think we made some statements and some general feelings about our attitude about the golf course and its future that are not represented in this. And in fact, what this represents is contrary to what was stated by Rocky Mountain, stated by council members, and stated by the general feeling of that meeting. So I think there's some major things still that are, so as far as just saying, let's just go forward, and I'm totally against that. This needs to have some more discussion.
But you will be getting those to us then.
It takes time right now to go over. It's for me. I don't want to bore anyone with it, but I think it's critical.
Could you share your top 1 or 2 concerns?
My top, well, they're all very important. I'll tell you the big one, probably in the real estate purchase agreement. Remember the discussion in the council, and I'm going to go back and go through it again because I've a couple times now. There was a discussion about, first of all, we didn't want to give any holes away. Golf community didn't want to give it. Then they kind of made a consensus, okay, we can give 3 holes away if we keep the golf course whole. And then there was quite a few restrictions on, okay, but if the golf course is ever sold, we want a first right of refusal, we want a first business. By the end of the meeting that night, if I remember right, and you can correct me, Mr. Namalka or Mr. Nelson. They said, we don't want the rest of the golf course. The council said, if we can give up 3 holes and keep the whole course, let's keep the golf course. Let's change the zoning. Let's even have a resolution saying we're not interested in selling more of the golf course. Well, if you take this real estate purchase agreement, it's quite a few points, but there are, starting on page 6 through page 7, now page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, and page 12. So out of a, I don't know, 18-page agreement, there's like 10 pages about first right of refusal and what we're going to do if or when the rest of the golf course is sold again. And I think that's just contrary to what the spirit of our council meeting was that night.
I thought we had agreed that they could have first right of refusal.
And my understanding was it all started with a big if the city ever decides to discontinue, and if we don't, then there's nothing there, and they're just saying if.
We're taking 10 pages in this agreement and spending on that if. And there's a whole bunch of other critical, and so it seems like to me that's still a real important part. And I don't think that was the spirit of the meeting. They're even saying in here about how we can zone that property, what the restrictive covenants on that property. So they're setting the rules on the rest of the golf course. And I'm not comfortable with that at all, and I don't think it was part of the spirit of the meeting. So that's one real big part. There's I think a real, in the development agreement, there's still a big question about the timing and how. Then when we were brought to the table in December and January, there was we heard over and over and over again from Rocky Mountain that, look, we've got to get this done. We've got to have this meeting on the 9th because we have earnest money agreement down on Nature Sunshine property. If we don't know you're going to vote for this, we don't want to close on that property. If we don't close by this date, we're going to lose it. Well, I don't know, but the sign's still up. I'm not sure that property's closed on yet, is it? No. Okay, so the urgency that we heard over and over and over again in December and January, I worked 6 months later, and where did that go? So the timing, I feel like we're going to have pressure. Once this deal is made, there's going to be all kinds of pressure on the parks and the golf course people to let them get construction started on those 3 holes. And there's a very specific process to get golf course ready for play. Yeah, you can put sod down in some fairways and sod down in some rough, but your greens, you can't sod those, you can't. That takes time to get those played. And I just don't see that specified. I don't think that's clarified. I know there's going to be pressure. There's also a clause in here that says they can go and they can disrupt the current 3 holes, do tests and do other things. There's no specific timing about how many disruptions to have. If that's going to be disrupted all the time and kill play on those 3 holes while they're doing their tests, I think that's going to be have a negative impact on the golf course. And I just hate to see us have a golf course that has been managed and directed and is so successful now. We start throwing these negatives in, and I know golfers, if they go down there and don't have an experience, they're going to go down to Sleepy Ridge, they're going to go to Hobblebrick, and we're going to lose memberships, we're going to lose activities. And I just think we've got to be so careful about how that transition is done. And I'm sorry, and I know they want to get started over here and get their medical school in, but not at the cost of losing the quality of our golf course. I think that was our intent in those meetings. There was urgency then for us to meet so they could get that process going, and now here we are 6 months later, and the urgency doesn't seem to be so critical, but it will be critical as soon as they start. They'll want us to go and start using golf courses. I'm just concerned about that. So there's a number of things to approach that. So those are some of them. There's 9 and 15, like I said, that are all critical.
Sure.
I don't think the number of pages on one person has anything to do with what the contract's a good contract or not. Maybe that's an important issue to both sides, and so it's dealt with in detail. That doesn't validate the agreement. I mean, okay, interesting. But to me, it doesn't make any difference if it's 5 pages or 10 pages on that particular issue. I think we just have to be sure whatever's there is fair. It's what we agreed to.
Okay, well, that's what I'll say. Those 5 pages are not what we agreed to.
With the time remaining, are there any motions that want to be entertained now, or shall we look to submit any concerns and feedback we have on contracts that we received to, if Dixon, if you'll be the point person on that, submit them to Dixon, and we'll look for the next one.
I'll make a motion consistent with what you told us, that we do what we agreed to do as far as considering it. And there's time in that discussion to make all kind, we go 10 hours if we need to. We need to do whatever we need to do. And it include public input.
All right, so we have a motion. Let's see if there's a second before taking any other comments.
Can you specify really what we're voting on?
So the
Then Brian explained what I just said.
Mr. Jones, would you please explain Mr. Stewart's motion?
So since he's saying consistent with what I said before, I would interpret that as being a motion that the administration come back to the council when they feel that the agreement reflects what they want the council to approve, and that there be a public meeting at which that version is considered for approval.
Okay, that is the motion.
Is that right, Mr. Stewart? Is that good? Okay.
You always do a better job than I do.
I will second it, and then we will look for discussion on it. Let's go here, Mr.
I just had a question about when you say give feedback. I have questions because I'm not very literate in reading agreements like this. So there are sections of this that I would love just some guidance on, make sure I'm
You want to
understanding it
schedule some
correctly.
time or send us an email, be happy to meet or respond to your email, whatever your preference is.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon.
And can I ask another question about that? In light of the previous meeting, I mean, we just need to go back and look at those notes. What's the best way for us to sort of gauge what Kay is talking about in terms of this?
Probably the minutes.
Well, we probably put together
Can you
something that
Summarize it.
summarizes what was discussed in that meeting.
That would be helpful.
Get it out tomorrow.
so that we know what we're talking about?
And the video of it is always a great resource as well.
That are written
It was like a 4-hour meeting, so it would be nice if I could get a summary, but yeah. As much as I like watching all of us on video.
All right, so let's for the moment, let's focus the discussion on the motion that is before us.
So if we come back in 2 days or in 30 days, the administration says, here is a document that we want you to consider. Does that come back to this setting in a work session to then schedule it for that public hearing, or how does that work?
I would say normally, I would think the council would want a work session to get an in-depth briefing on the agreement and to be able to ask questions, and then go to an evening meeting for public comment and approval. I'd leave it up to,
Since I made the motion, let me clarify that.
Yeah.
They come to a work meeting and then the council has notice from the same evening that it could obviously be.
continued if there were sufficient questions.
Okay, so we would go through the leadership process of saying the administration now has a document that we feel comfortable with signing. We're representing that they feel comfortable in signing it, and that would come back in a work session. So it would, again, be anywhere from 10 to 2 weeks before that work session that we would bring that and say, we now have a document that we feel is ready to be brought back to this setting, that would then, you would then make a motion to set it for a public hearing.
Well, Mr. Stewart's motion was that when you come back and tell us that, we schedule it, publish public notice of work session and evening council meeting for the same day.
Okay,
With the understanding that in the work session, someone could make a motion.
We always can. Parliamentary procedure.
Question, what are the advance notice requirements for an item like this?
Just 24 hours.
But in the interest of public engagement and public process, I would feel uncomfortable truncating that. There need to be a very strong reason to. I think it'd be good to have the public, give them the ability to look over
Leadership
those
committee
things.
decision.
Right. Okay.
So just,
Yes.
we would be working to bring this back to the 10th and the 17th of July. Now, I don't know if we'll get there, but that would be the intent to resolve all those issues.
Sounds good to me.
Do we want to notice it that way? If he's planning on it, should we go ahead and notice it?
Well, we don't.
I'll add my motion to go back to the July 17th work session and.
So I will re-second your last change. I don't know if I would second this current change just because
Doesn't it conflict the motion itself? So we're saying bring it back when they have an agreement.
right.
Now we're saying bring it back to the 17th.
That's fine. We'll just leave it up.
I'm just telling you my intent. That's not saying it's on, I'm just saying that's my goal to work towards.
That's what I'm trying to call.
Yeah.
You're right.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? Call for vote on the motion. All in favor? And any opposed?
Yeah.
In favor also. All right. With that, we are unanimous support of that motion. No.
So any other council members, just that do have comments or have questions, want a face-to-face or email exchange, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to facilitate that.
All right. Let me thank you, Mr. Holmes, the whole team that's been working on this, for our partners. We want to make sure this is done right, but I think there is general enthusiasm on the council for what's going to take place. And so we're, let's full steam ahead. Let's do this.
Just want to say thank you to everybody. Your team has been diligent working with us. There's case highlight, there's some complicated issues, make sure we get it right. We're trying.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. Mr. Jones?
If I could just kind of second what Dixon just said about forwarding his comments. I know Dixon is setting up a meeting for later in this week. I'm planning on being there. I think Camille probably is as well. But as many of you know, I've been out a lot the last couple of weeks, and so I've been kind of late to this, and I'm still working through the documents. Camille and I know each have a long list of issues, but I'd hate to miss one of your issues because you're waiting to hear what our issues are before you tell us what you're. So if you do have, I'd really appreciate it if any comments or concerns that you have, if you shared with us so we could add them to our list.
Is there, would it be best to wait another week to comb through what because what I have right now are the two PDFs that were
If you
on the
have
site.
comments on those, I'd rather get those now and you have comments.
I think something got the latest red light, so they could come.
Yeah.
Right.
Not as of Thursday afternoon. I'll get that to you right now. It'll be in your inbox.
Okay.
I guess I would say with this caveat, right, to answer your question and kind of streamline your efforts. I would, if it were me asking you to do something, I would ask you to give the one that Dixon's going to send you right now a skim to point out big picture issues that you're concerned about, and then probably wait for the next one before you actually read every line and say, hey, this sentence doesn't make sense to me, because I think there's going to be a lot of changes between Thursday and next
We'll
week.
also attempt to give you a clean version, and we'll give you both, but it's easier to read the clean version than go back and see. You can edit how you want, but
But any feedback you have, we will also. That's my suggestion.
yeah, just please reach out.
So which copy do you have? Are you sending out to everyone? Or just-
What you receive Thursday, I will send to the group
I received
Thursday.
the one I have, not the new one.
The new one, sorry for the versions, but yeah, so Thursday night, when we sent that out to their group, you received that. Cliff received it, but I don't believe the other councilman, and that's what I will send out to the group right now.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We will move on to the next item. Item 3, a discussion on police personnel levels. This will be presented by our police chief, Richard Ferguson, along with Daniel Softley, our Human Resources Division Director. We are just a minute behind, but we'll hope to make that minute up. So let's see if we can conclude our discussion by 1:45.
You thought I heard my name.
Yes, I apologize. I just read in the next item and turn the time over to you.
Having me today. Quick handout, pass out to the council members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you about police retention and a little bit about recruitment in the police department. As you know, retention and in the police world right now is serious throughout the United States and in Utah. Recent comments in local media, I don't know if you've had a chance to read or not, by Tom Ross, who is the president of the Utah Chiefs of Police Association and is also the Bountiful Police Chief, identified that there are over 600 vacancies in law enforcement positions in Utah alone at this time. The recruitment of police officers is down nationally. Factors such as a strong economy and negative press about our profession are driving people into other fields. Agencies who are desperate to fill vacancies are often paying higher salaries and incentives to attract officers from other agencies. Over the past year, Provo has lost 5 officers to other police agencies in Utah. The reasons our officers have given for leaving Provo range from a desire to relocate their family to higher salaries and less workload. During the past year, we have also had an unusually high number of officers enter into retirement, 8 in total. And while we celebrate these officers' accomplishments and dedication to the city, we recognize the loss it is to our city, losing that knowledge base. Currently, our department is staffed by the following figures. 0 to 5 year officers were at 31% of our staffing. Those are sworn personnel. 5 to 10 year officers were at 16%. 10 to 20 year officers were at 34%. And 20 year plus officers who are eligible to retire, that doesn't mean they're going to, but they could retire, are at 19%. Our challenge now, as I see it, is twofold. Our manpower shortages, as I presented to you earlier this year, and then keeping the current officers we have here in Provo. It's hard to predict the true cost of an officer's turnover. There's many intangible and untrackable costs associated with an officer's career experience in Provo, but as you can see from this handout, a 5-year police officer, and I'm not going to use this officer's name, but this is an officer who hasn't left us, one of the 5 that has left us. You can see that a 5-year Provo police officer is a very highly trained police officer. Because they're so well trained and versed in complex calls for service, they become very attractive to outside agencies who are willing to pay higher salaries. The replacement cost to replace a police officer with no experience, put them through the academy and outfit them is close to $150,000. I'm very pleased with the 18 officers that we've hired over the past year. Seem to be the best people in our society. They have potential to be great leaders, and they're showing great professionalism already. But the reality is, it is going to take them 0 to 5 years to gain the knowledge, skills, and abilities to take on leadership roles within our police department. What I can't afford to do is to lose those people. I have to keep that group of people, that 0 to 5 year group. Within the department, we believe that we have a very good and a very strong retention package available, meaning we have a destination city here that is nationally ranked. We have citizens who still appreciate police officers and tell us that regularly. Within our department, we have a very challenging performance-based career series program for officers to enter into so that throughout their career, they can be progressing. And it is performance-based. We know that our Provo officers handle a very high and complex call volume, and that this gives them a lot of opportunities for growth that they wouldn't find in other agencies. We offer them special teams that they can be members of and special assignments. Because Provo officers handle this high call volume, I know that their salaries have to be high enough to retain them. In March, I met with you. And I pointed out the need to increase our manpower to meet the growing call volume and the growing population of our city. Now we're facing this new challenge with other agencies who are raising their salaries to a level that is attracting our officers to go work for those agencies. I need to keep my officers here. The ones that I have, I need to keep them here. I can't be a training ground for other agencies. Some of the things that we're doing to keep our officers here are the proposal that will come to you to remove a fee that our officers are currently paying to take home their police cars. And other agencies that are in this area are charging their officers to take those cars home. We've identified the need for a new public safety building. A new public safety building, I believe, would help with retention of our officers, giving them the workspace they need to do their job. We research and we identify and we secure the very best equipment we can for our police officers. We train our officers in the best practices to keep them safe and to give the best proactive police service to the city and the citizens. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe we have a desire to become a destination police department, much as this is a destination city, but we're not there yet. Never before has recruitment and retention of officers been as crucial and critical and challenging for police departments as it is today. I do believe that in order for Provo to become competitive and successful in the recruitment and retention of officers, we need to constantly review the labor market and compensation systems of other agencies in Utah and be competitive in our salaries above market median. I propose that instead of being at market level, our officer salaries should be in the highest levels of our market studies in order to retain our officers and to have and attract officers who might be wishing to come to Provo. I've asked Daniel Softly to help me with this and to work with this proposal. I believe that he has a solution that could help make us a very competitive police department and a place where other agencies, other officers who may want to relocate here from other states, other jurisdictions would want to come and work for us. I'm going to turn the time over to Daniel at this time to explain what he has. But the packet that I handed out to you, and I'd rather not use the name that is on it, but you can see the level of training that we've put into our officers.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How much, how do we compare with the loss of other officers? I know this is a statewide problem, but how are our officers leaving our department compared with other cities? Is it statewide? Is everybody moving? Is it kind of a rotating thing, or is it specific to our city?
That's not specific. It's not specific to our city. Like I said, we have lost 5 in the last year, but it's not specific to our city.
Or so are other cities losing 5, what the same size of ours? Or are they're smaller? Are they losing 4? Or is something unique to Provo that we need to look at ours specifically?
I don't know the exact number on that. I would say that we're lower than some, and because of our size of our department, we may be higher than others.
I guess, let me try to phrase it this way, Mr. Richardson. Do we feel like it's been kind of a, I don't want to say status quo, but an equilibrium? We've lost 5 of this experience, but we also gained from other cities 5 of equivalent experience, and so it's kind of a wash.
It hasn't been. The 5 that we replaced have all been brand new officers. So we've lost 5 very tenured officers with a lot of experience, but we have not brought in 5 with equal experience.
Which gets to your comment about being a training ground for other cities.
Exactly. Dan?
To that,
Thank you.
thank you, or?
Yeah.
Okay. To that question though, I've been tracking, excuse me, police turnover for the 18 years that I've been here. We're not pulling in officers from other agencies for the most part. Every once in a while, we'll get officers who have experience somewhere else, whether it be another agency or out of state. But the 5 officers to the smaller surrounding areas is unusual based on what I've seen for the last 18 years. Also, I'm well aware that other agencies are becoming fairly aggressive in how they attract or trying to get experienced people because they don't want to have a police force that has 0 to 5 as well. So I'd say that generally I don't overreact to these types of trends, but I would say this is a pretty strong trend in that direction that speaks to a general shortage of people wanting to go into the law enforcement career. And I think that's what's driving most of this right now. We can be competitive within the market, but only time will tell when you have the market working itself out is how much is needed to attract enough quality people to do that so that it levels itself out. So that's just my take on what I've seen on the trends. What Rich asked me to do is, or Chief, sorry, asked me to do is to go to our current market philosophy and to cost out options if we were to use the most aggressive aspects of our market philosophy. Now, currently our philosophy is to be plus or minus 5% of the average market comparison that we're using. Sometimes that's starting pay. Generally, it's the top of the range. And so what I did is I went and looked and said, all right, well, if we go to the top levels of our compensation philosophy, which we have used in these types of situations before, the dollar amount is a little bit higher because you have not just 3 or 4 applicants or incumbents, you have 100 incumbents. So all of that adds up very fast. So I come up with a three-pronged approach. The very first thing is I said, all right, where is our starting pay at? And if we were to go to the upper levels of our compensation philosophy while still maintaining that philosophy, what would that do? And so that would entail adjusting our starting pay, keeping our current career series, but then adjusting our starting pay and then making in-grade adjustments all the way through the end of the career series in order to prevent less tenured officers from leapfrogging those who have more experience. That primarily affects officers who have 0 to 11 to 12 years of experience. But you can build a lateral program off of that then because you'll bring in officers who have the same level of experience and they'll be equal with those who have the experience with us. That's the first prong approach. The cost to do that, effective July 1st, would be $316,000 to increase starting pay and make in-grade adjustments through our existing career series. One of the things that we talked about last time I was here was how do you incentivize officers who have been here for around 10 years to between that 5 to 10 year to stay. The second prong that I'm recommending is that we add a level to the career series. This puts us at a positive market position at the top of our range, but it also builds in another increase opportunity for police officers who have the most experience. Typical career series is a 7.5% adjustment. That would not need to go into effect July 1st. In fact, Chief Ferguson has requested a little bit of time to figure out how that would work within our existing career series. If you were to implement, though, that July 1st fiscal year, that's $215,000 based on who would qualify for that, just kind of a projected basis. If you do that, though, there's the third prong approach, which is if you increase the top of the police officer career series by adding another level, that will create salary compression against our supervisory levels and should have to make adjustments accordingly as well, so that you don't have line personnel making the same as their sergeant. The total to do that, if that was to go into effect July 1st, is $103,000. So if everything was to go into effect on July 1st, you're looking at a total of $634,000 inclusive of retirement. Okay. So there are some savings that you could make by, again, if you were to delay the implementation of the top of the career series. That would also mean you could delay the adjustment to the supervisory positions. If you delayed that by a quarter, like 3 months, then the total cost to move forward would be $554,000 in the next fiscal year.
But next year, it's the full amount anyway. I mean, these are ongoing expenses.
Correct.
We hire an officer that has experience, which we haven't been doing. Is his experience and credit at the same level as he's been in our department?
That's a lateral program. That is what we have created, is a lateral program. And right now I evaluate what I'm getting. If I'm getting I don't do an equal 5 years for 5 years based on what kind of a city
But
they
you
come from.
can.
Again,
That's my question. Is you can.
that's certainly maybe the easiest way to do it. But we just haven't had a lot of officers from other agencies coming here.
Right. I just want to be sure we have that option
We
because
do have that option.
I've been recruiting all my life in business and you have to have that option.
We do. We just barely hired, and he's in our in-house program, an officer from Helper, Utah. And brought him in, 3-year officer brought him in around the 2.5-year range.
You make a motion for the purpose of discussion.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You make a motion that we ask the administration to bring this back after we've approved the budget. I don't think we need it. We're going to approve a budget tonight. I'm not ready to make a decision on these. These are pretty major things. That they bring back a resolution asking the council appropriate out of the general fund balance and not necessary for the program that they feel is sufficient to answer this emergency. General fund balance is for emergency situation. This is an emergency in my mind. I don't know anything more important to the city than public safety. And to say, well, general fund balance, we can't use that. Yeah, we can use that if it's necessary. If we had a cyclone hit us or we had the storms hit us when I was mayor, we used lots of money from general fund for needs. In my mind, this is an emergency. So I would hope that we could have them bring back a proposal to fund whatever they recommend. And we can, of course, look at what they recommend if we're in favor of it. But I think we need to do this as soon as possible. I don't think we have to do it tonight. I would be against making an adjustment to the current budget tonight. It's just not, this is our last hearing. I just need more time to that.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Okay, looking for a second. Okay, we have a second by Mr. Connect and a comment by Mr. Parker.
We do have some options we'd like to present to you that could be effective with the current budget. I'd like to ask John Morgan to maybe come forward to share a few ideas we've had about strategies for how to implement what Daniel and the chief were talking about.
You can recommend something tonight.
Well, we have some options that could allow you to take action tonight.
Okay, good.
John?
One of the big concerns that I have, first of all, I'm supportive of this recommendation just because I think it's so critical for our police department, but it is an ongoing expense. It's not a one-time expenditure. So I think it's critical that we have a way to pay for this ongoing. And I think as we look at all the discussions we've had in the past with our budget committee and looking at making sure that we have a structurally sound budget, I think if we were to adopt this without a way to pay for it, there would be, in my mind, a big mistake. So I see two options, actually three options. One option would be to not make any changes and to not make changes to the police compensation. The second one would be to consider a property tax increase. If we did that, it could limit us on some other things that we were looking at possibly doing with the public safety building in the city center, but that could be an option. We looked at that, and that would be a 14% increase in the general fund property tax rate, which the impact annually for a home is it 275,000 would be $18.33 annually, or $1.53 monthly. The third option would be to look at some of the things that we've proposed in this, including in this budget, and I've just listed some ideas. One would be the 4 officers that we've recommended, the additional 4 officers. We've talked with Daniel Softly, with administration, with Chief Ferguson, and nobody likes this, but we feel like the most important thing is that we retain our base and that we take care of our foundation. so that we have the ability to run the police department the way it should. The next item would be, we have a budget officer that we had, and basically somebody that would be over the budget and police. We feel like this is something that's important, but both finance and budget would be committed to helping the police as they have in the past, and that would provide about $80,000. Another item that we had included in the budget that's something that's been needed, but we haven't had it in the current year, would be, we had about $20,000 in body worn cameras. And then the last thing that we talked about was there a proposal to include some funding for fire equipment replacement. We think it's a great idea. We're excited about it, but based on the crisis that we're facing right now, we would probably have that to be a discussion next year to see if we come up with funding for that. If you did those 4 items, that would give you $545,000, which is just short of the $554 that would be needed if you were to basically go with the 2 options of the upper compensation and the changes with management to the end of the first quarter. If you did these changes, you would have a sustainable funding source for this recommendation. Questions?
What were the amounts for the first item for the 4 officers?
Yeah, I can give you the breakdown right now. The 4 officers is $405,212. The budget officer is $80,941. The body worn cameras was $19,600. And then the fire equipment replacement was $40,000. And those should total $545,753. These don't go without pain. I mean, they're painful. They're things that that we all have a real difficulty with. But what's more painful for me is if we create a situation where we don't have funding sources for ongoing expenses. And so, push comes to shove, these were some of the options that the council could consider.
Mr. Stewart.
Because of the need for possible bonding, I would be in favor of option 3. Because I'm in favor of the new officers, but I think it's easier, once we make the decision on the other, and we move forward on the other, then we can move forward on the new officers. I would support a property tax actually, but not now.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about in administration today with Chief Ferguson is that, you know, there's several things that seriously impact our ability to attract and retain officers. And it's not just compensation, it's also a new public safety building that gives them the ability to work and have space. And so
I don't want to jeopardize that, John.
That's right. Yeah, so we're in agreement with that.
Is that, I mean, maybe there's no way to know this, but I mean, is the lack of the public safety building presently, the problem with the facilities, an insurmountable problem? In other words, you increase the compensation package, but people say it's not worth it to work in that building. Is it that big of a problem, or do you think I mean, and I don't know if the answer is it's not, then I don't know what the solution is. But
Can I help answer that in my mind? We have 2 crises, losing officers and public safety building. I think probably both are equally important, quite frankly, to me. That's why I'd like to solve both of them by getting bonding for what we need for public safety building, and in addition, changing the salary compensation. So I don't know, I mean, that's how I view it. I think they're equally important, for me at least.
The things I identified earlier in the year with the public safety building, such as the evidence locker room, I would say that the majority of my officers are not aware of how overflowing our evidence area is right now, and the problems that we face with water and everything else. They're probably not aware of those things. Those are critical infrastructure needs that we need.
But it's not so much a morale thing.
I think it has to do with morale. I think it does, and I think the value system walking in there. I mean, when I have the majority of my officers, a 60-person patrol division working out of what at one time was a lieutenant's office, and it's small. It's hard. It's tough. So I believe it has something to do with it, but more critical is the need for just more space to be able to do our job, to be able to safely do our job. Another thing, if you remember, I pointed out was the safety of people coming to the police department. The safety of our officers when they're interviewing and interrogating people who are being investigated for crimes all the way up to homicide, and the ability for them to escape the building through a glass door, those things. Those are the things that I'm critically worried about with the facility itself.
I would hope that, that as we get underway with the new public safety facility, then that would kind of become a non-issue. That new officers or officers are there realize that if they just hold out for another year or two, then they will be going into a new, a nicer area. So hopefully, once we get moving forward on that would be resolved. I really appreciate this discussion on what do we have to give up in order to get this. I think this is that's an important part of the budgeting process, and I applaud that. Appreciate it. I'm curious. All four of these things are public safety related, and I guess the first question, I like option 3. I think it's definitely something we should consider. I do want to hear from the chief. I do worry by not adding these 4 officers. Not only are we not progressing to get to where we need to be as far as staffing levels, but we're on we go without increasing any, just digging a deeper hole that we'll have to climb out of later. But I agree that I think this is kind of a critical, it's kind of a crisis we need to respond to immediately. But I just kind of want to hear from the chief, given the 2 options, 4 new officers and a budget officer, budget analyst versus this solution. You feel good with responding this way now with the idea that hopefully in the future we'll get around to adding officers, or how do you feel about that?
Well, it's not something I feel good about. Like I said in my statement, officer safety will always be the top priority for me. And as I identified earlier in the year, we currently have 8.9 officers per 10,000 residents compared to other cities that have 12 and 15 officers per 10,000. And our call volume continues to rise, and it's complex here. I need more police officers. But what I can't afford is to continue to lose ones I have, and the level of trained officers that I have. So if given the choice between the 2, a very hard decision, I have to keep the officers I have. But I will be coming back next year to ask for more officers. That won't go away. That need for more officers, but it's a hard decision, an extremely hard decision. The budget officer I'm fine with. I personally don't want to cause any problem between fire and us. So that I wasn't aware of that particular line item being cut from their budget, but yeah, that's where I'm at. That's the world I live in today. That salaries and packages are going up in other agencies, and I can't keep losing my officers.
Do we have we looked at non-public safety items in the budget and to see if we can make up for at least part of this?
Well, Dustin and I have actually, we've been going through the budget balancing process for the last couple of months. We've been going through and scrubbing it. I mean, it's tough to go through unless you're ready to just say, okay, we don't want to provide this service anymore. One example of something that's been discussed that could be looked at is we have, an economic development position that hasn't been filled, okay? There was a real desire to be able to fill that position during the fiscal year and meet our economic development needs. And so, but that's one that could be looked at. Can you give any other things, Dustin? We looked pretty tough and it's been a challenge.
Yeah, anything is not going to come out.
What's that?
To get significant dollars.
Now, but I would think that we would put off hiring someone to economic development, so we should not cut the fire department or other things, and it's a no-brainer.
It's an option, yeah, it is, and that's why I bring that up.
I think Mr. Van Buren had a comment, and then Mr. Stewart. You're good.
I'm straying a little, I don't want to get us off topic, but Chief, I'm in the building industry and we can't get help. I can't get electricians and no one wants to learn to be a plumber. No one wants to learn, but I have a roofer that says, okay, I can start tomorrow if I get the help, and our income would be $350,000, $400,000 a year just doing roof repairs because I can't get. So there's a little bit of the same relationship. Sometimes it's not even the pay that's doing it, it's they just don't want to, workers don't want to get dirty and be cold and, and so I see this with the police, a little, not the same thing, but so much of the negative publicity we've got nationally, police, I can see where that has a negative influence for young people that want to get in the police business. Is there any kind of a movement nationally, or is there a program that we could enlist, or you have enlisted already, even locally, that to beef that image up somehow, or to?
That's a good question. The Utah Chiefs of Police Association is paying attention to the retirement system. A few years ago, 2011, the state changed the retirement system for public safety. In my world, it's 50 or a 20-year retirement at 50% of your salary. Currently, it is 25 years at 37%. That it is the worst public safety retirement system in the Western United States. So at a state level, we're trying to fix that. That has been a draw away from Utah as far as bringing officers in. You just can't discount 24-hour news and the impact that has on a spouse or somebody. And I posed the question, and I don't know what the answer is in this room, but I've thought a lot about it. How many of you are encouraging your children to become police officers or to marry police officers? It's not a popular profession. It's a hard profession. And in today's world where we have to wear a body-worn camera, nobody wants to be videoed in what they do all day long, but we require it of our officers now. There's a lot of pressures on the job. So that, coupled with a poor retirement system and all those negative aspects that are there, it's tough. And a strong economy.
I just noticed the time on this. We may take a little extra time because this isn't such a critical item, but let's see if we can move things forward. Mr. Stewart?
I'm going to make a motion that you take the economic development position out of the budget and take that money and spread it around where you need to. Work with the administration on what you've already taken out, what you not to take out, but maybe that is.
You could, the body worn cameras and also the fire equipment replacement could be added back if you use that economic development. How much is the position? Do you know?
$86,000.
So that's actually even a little bit more than those two items. So
Maybe my motion that we replace those, leave those two items in the budget and replace it with not filling that economic development position for now.
Mr. Stewart, procedurally, is that a substitute motion from your previous motion? Because we had a motion on the table. You're withdrawing that one, okay.
Thank you, I forgot. I appreciate that. Is there a second on that motion? Van Buren and discussion.
Do we have a sense of, going back to the property tax question, what our property tax rates look like compared to other cities in terms of the percentage that goes to public safety? I mean, I guess I'm just wondering if we're far below a certain typical bar that other cities have, if that's kind of unthinkable at this point because there's already a feeling that there's people are overtaxed. I mean, I'm personally of the persuasion that it's an honor and a pleasure to pay taxes for public safety, and I don't feel that as a burden. I feel that as a responsibility. But I don't know where we're at, both financially or politically in the city, as to whether or not.
I can explain it to you. So the city property tax is broken up into three components. Okay, one component is for the general fund, and in that general fund, part of that funding is for public safety as well as other general fund functions. And then there's a portion that goes to debt service, which currently pays the payment for our rec center bond. okay? And there's a portion that goes to the library or the operations of the library because that bond's paid off. If you just look at our general fund property tax rate compared to, how many do we have? How about 20?
Overseas.
And we have about 20 other entities. We're the lowest, okay? If you take all three of those and add them together and just see how much the residents are paying in property tax compared to those other 20, we're in the middle, right in the middle of the pack. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we're at on our property tax. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It might be worth noting, John, that the total revenue from property tax in the general fund would not come close to funding the total police department budget.
Yeah.
So just in scale.
About 4 million, isn't it?
And police's budget is.
Yes.
So it funds a very small slice even of the police department budget.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have a question. My question is, John, you mentioned that we'd be in the middle. How long have we been at the bottom of everything? Because are we still making up issues for years and years of neglect?
The general fund rate, we've been at the bottom or within the bottom 2 or 3 for years and years and years. Our total fund property tax rate, as we paid off the library bonds and as we kind of, it's been moving down. So we've been getting lower and lower, but right now we're about the middle.
So sorry, I've been about this. So some cities have a library system, and I imagine they don't necessarily have a separate fund for it. They just pay for it out of their general fund. So I think where we could roll all three of those together and then compare that to other cities, that's probably a better comparison. It sounds like we're currently in the middle of the pack if we take the cumulative.
Some of the cities we compare with don't have a library.
That's right.
It's operated by the county. So Weaver County, Davis County, for example, there are no city library revenues, expenditures, or taxes. So again, it's a difficult comparison to find.
And then the way I saw it was Mr. Stewart, Mr. Connect, and then, sorry, Mr. Sewell, Mr. Connect, and then Mr. Stewart.
Thank you. So you presented several options, and we have a new option here on the table in terms of economic development. Mr. Parker, from the mayor's office point of view, what's your perspective on, or how would you weight these options? What would you recommend?
Well, we debated in preparing the mayor's budget what to do with that vacant economic development position. We could have added one more officer to that process, but our feeling was that and again, the council's priority, we kind of agreed to discuss only after we finished the wastewater treatment plant discussion, so we did it in context. Our concern is that we don't really have a retail specialist in our existing department, but we want to have a more robust discussion around retail before we fill the position. So I think our desire was to keep the position in place to allow us to have a discussion during this next fiscal year about our retail emphasis and should we bring in, and it could be an employee, could be a consultant, but to bring in a resource that would really help us with the specifics of a retail strategy and implementation. How do we go out and attract them? How do we, again, think about incentives and a variety of these things? So on balance, when the mayor completed the recommended budget, her decision in weighing those two was to say we need to keep our option open with economic development. Now, again, the budget is now yours. You can decide what you want to do with it, but that was her thinking in preparing the mayor's recommended budget and why we didn't do 5 police officers and cut an economic development position.
Okay. So if someone says how much of our property tax is dedicated towards the police, 0. Right?
About 500%.
Yeah, or 0, because we don't really say that.
It's a small piece.
Yeah, it's a very small piece compared.
But when we collect property tax, it goes into the general fund.
But the general fund, basically, one of the largest departments. Matter of fact, The largest department within the general fund is the police department, so that's part of it.
Right, but there's other ways that we fund the services that we supply, so, you know,
Sales tax is a big area that
Yeah.
is gonna fund the police department.
Right. So, you know, when someone says, well, you know, where does my money go that goes into the general fund? Well, it goes a lot of places. And I think it might be misleading to say that it's dedicated and set in stone that, you know, 10% of your property tax will always go to the police. Now, if we want to say that we're going to raise property tax this year, X amount, $2 a household, and we're doing that because we want to have a police officer, that's different. That's a different conversation.
There's still nothing that would prevent a future council or administration and say, okay, we're gonna go ahead and cut an officer and spend it somewhere else in the general fund.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not tagged or earmarked for that, but it does provide us an ongoing funding source if we were to make a property tax increase.
Mr. Stewart.
The reason I'm not wanting to do anything with property tax right now is because of the other issues we have on bonding. To have a truth in taxation, raise property tax by 14%, and then go for a bond. It's not the time. I'm willing to discuss that after the other issues is solved. And number two, Wayne, there's no reason you have to wait for another year for 4 police officers or an economic development person. We do supplementals all the time.
We do. Again, we've, because of the financial principles document that's in the budget that says ongoing revenue should support ongoing expenditures, we've been reluctant to bring you supplementals during the year that don't have an ongoing source, recognizing that it puts us in the hole beginning the budget process next year.
Not ever ongoing source, but sales tax is not, when we get the final figure this year. I think there will be enough person on that position.
That's possible. Again, we try to be conservative in estimating our revenue, so you have flexibility later in the year.
But to take the money from fire and police, and then taking the development, which we can still fund that position sometime during the year, once we have the discussion on retail. I would be committed, I was committed personally to bring that up, look for a method to fund that budget. Because I don't want that position to go away, but I think the other is just more critical right now.
Any other comments on the motion?
John, what's the differential between the two items we talked about, for body worn cameras and fire, compared to the total allocated for the
So they
position?
they total 69,600, so roughly 70,000. I think Dustin said it was 86.
So the actual was 83.60.
So it's about
3/4, a little more.
about 13,000 more.
I say we could, you know, I mean, we have, one thing we've done occasionally in the past is to fund a position starting mid-year. Now again, that still puts you in the hole for next year, but if it's only one position and it's at this level, you could fund a position for half a year, but that would only net you $40,000 to come back and resolve some of these other issues, but that's another possibility.
I would certainly add that to my motion. Very basic motion for central administration.
I had those two items only roughly 60,000, not 70,000. Did I write them down wrong?
You're right. You're right. It's 59.6 or 60. That's right. So there's more. That's a good point. Sorry about that.
So it'd be about,
yeah, about 24. Good
so
correction.
that would put you into the end of third quarter of the fiscal year, so
And if things are going well, we can fund zero here.
that's certainly possible.
And I generally am supportive of this option 4, if we're calling it that. I do definitely want to hear from the administration, make sure everyone's okay with that. I'm a little wary that, you know, our budgeted officer,
But yeah,
just
Budget
kind of
analyst,
mentions,
yeah.
but this is an example of something that we have talked about in the past, and then we just kind of jump on that. You know, I like to see well-formed proposals come forward. But I makes me a little nervous that we're just kind of legislating on the fly, so to speak. I don't know if we could request as a council that you bring forward your best, you know, understanding that we want to keep our public safety budget as intact as possible and just bring us something this evening that you think is the best way moving forward to balance as we discussed. Okay, wonderful. Okay, if that's in the motion, then I would feel more comfortable with that.
Intent is to bring that back tonight with including those changes. Something we also discussed earlier this cycle was some potential carryover from the council offices being used for alternative sources. I think there's an opportunity there to use that money to fill this gap and not budget as much, but still provide that money. We talked about potentially using it to fund the innovation program, but I don't think the council made any official motion on how they would like to use those.
Well, it also could be, and again, you're still coming up on the Miss Provo discussion, you still have a gap there to resolve as well. And I understand priorities, I totally get that, but I think you want to make sure you make it in context. Let me just make one other observation. If we're not really talking about increasing the bottom line of the general fund, but we're talking about moving money around, we could always come back to you with a budget amendment at the first meeting in July with making some of these interdepartmental changes. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be sort of legislating on the fly tonight, but if you kind of expressed your intent for a desire to see that, we could come back to you, do a public hearing, just like we would moving money from one department to another, and do that at the first meeting in July. I don't know. I'm asking the question. We could do that.
The only difference between the proposal and the current budget as proposed is a $40,000 transfer to the general CIP for the fire equipment. So the rest of it is just kind of reprogramming within the police department, which we have the latitude to do under our current budget resolution. So
yeah, we could do that. But if we wanted to do economic development or council budget or any of those kinds of things, again, I think that would be another option. Would be to go ahead and approve the budget as is. We'll just bring back to you in 3 weeks proposal to make some modifications to the budget.
My proposal, I hate mentioning it, I also, so I would prefer to withdraw my motion, second withdraw, and let's go with what you just suggested, but preferable for me.
We'd be happy to do that.
My only concern would be that it's just important that we don't march forward and start the process of hiring some additional officers before we identify the funding.
Well, you can bring it back July, so hopefully that won't happen.
Yeah, I think we could move fairly quickly on that and just, again, encapsulate this discussion today, bring you back a budget resolution, essentially an amendment to the budget that you would adopt by resolution.
And I assume, with our police chief here and with him, when this is the greater need, I imagine we don't get too far on.
I think it's a good recommendation.
Okay. One last thought. When I was being sold on the budget officer, I kind of looked at that a little sideways. Why aren't we doing another regular officer? Why a budget officer? And my understanding was we have a sergeant,
lieutenant currently,
that is investing significant amount of time into that, and so by investing in a budget analyst, you'd be freeing someone who's highly trained to be doing other things. And so I've been sold so well on that. I'm a little nervous to give up that budget analyst.
Nervous about giving it all of that.
Right. But it's one of those things that if we don't put in an extra $1, if we're willing to put in an extra $1, we get $4 out, and now to save money, we're going to take that $1 away, but now we're going to lose.
I would just say that I think all the items that we've listed, we're proposing to fund this change in police compensation fits in that category. I mean, I think we could all talk about how we need those 4 officers so desperately, but it just comes down to what's your highest priority on limited resources. And the other thing I would just let you know, I think it's great that we can have this discussion and come back, but I will just say, unless we make major cuts in services that we're offering to the residents, we're not going to find these kind of dollars laying around. Dustin and I, we've dug and dug and dug. It's just going to be tough, but I still like the idea of coming back with an amendment to the budget.
Well, and again, as Mr. Stewart knows when the council appropriates, the mayor has the opportunity to spend or not spend. The mayor can move money within departments and again, in this case, we're really talking about from moving it from personnel to personnel in some ways. And so again, we may not need to do anything as it relates to the police department budget in terms of a budget amendment. It's really just moving money from one department to another as a part of this change. So your budget appropriation may be or your budget amendment may be relatively simple when we bring it to you in a few weeks.
Everyone comfortable with that, where we're at? We need anything to wrap up?
Yeah, we need to go to the motion.
Motion has been withdrawn. So,
Motion.
yeah, it was very helpful, thank you. Let me just thank our budget team, thank our police officers, our police department, our chief, and everyone else who's working on this. All right, we are now well behind. We are going to move forward with a discussion on funding options for Miss Provo and Great Flow. We have 30 minutes budgeted and scheduled to end at 2:15, which is only 8 minutes away, but we will send that a little bit. But if we can make up 5 or 10 minutes on this, it would be helpful.
Vice Chair, I'd just point out, I know that we've probably got a lot of things to talk about in closed session, but according to our schedule, if we're planning on continuing the general plan item, that was scheduled for an hour. So I think you have some wiggle room because of that.
There are 3 items from closed meeting, so. Okay.
So we may not want to use the full hour, maybe have some.
Let's see if we can make up 5 minutes on this next item, and I think it will be presentation apparently is council discussion. Does anyone want to lead out and frame more discussion? All right, Mr. Sewell.
Well, I would love to be supportive of the mayor's request that she made at the last meeting that we appropriate, I think it was $5,250 to go toward the scholarships for the Miss Provo, whether that is directly, and I've heard that there was some discussion about maybe following that through the Freedom Festival. I don't know where we're at on that, if that's where those discussions.
My understanding, my thought, if I understood it, and we talked about it maybe in a few different meetings, so I don't remember where it was discussed necessarily, but the scholarship money would be coming directly from us, that where we might partner with the Freedom Festival is they would do the administration of the program.
And if I could report on that.
Yes, please.
I had a discussion with Warner, and they had several questions as to why Provo was giving it up in the first place. And they recognized that they did have it before, but they were bringing it back. They wanted a few questions answered before they made the final commitment. But at this point, they were willing. They seemed pretty positive towards accepting the Miss Provo pageant under the Freedom Festival umbrella.
And so we would no longer be in the administration of the program, and that would be handed off. But I believe the mayor's proposal is still for the city to fund.
How much is in the budget?
We would be more as a sponsor.
As a sponsor, we'd be sponsoring at the level of 5250.
The budget that you'll see tonight includes full funding for the float as it was presented by the Parks and Recreation Department 2 weeks ago. We haven't made any changes to the other portion of Miss Provo pending this discussion.
So it's still at 10?
So there's still $10,000 in the budget at the moment.
One other comment. So in talking with the Miss Provo organizers, they would be happy, very appreciative if we could just do the $5,250 and perhaps donate use of the Covey Center that one night. That would those two things would really be helpful. So
Motion, David?
I make a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion which would be to sponsor the scholarships for the Miss Provo pageant at 5250 and donate the use of the Covey Center for that.
I could just say that Kelsey's probably down the hall if she needs to come address this, but you know, Kelsey's been working on a draft of a services, a support agreement. I do think that's a vital component of this whole thing as far as establishing what the city is getting for the use of the taxpayer funds that it's expending, just from a legal perspective. So the details of this certainly can still be worked out, and I think some of what you just mentioned, like the Covey Center isn't in here, but could easily be added. I guess the question that I have procedurally is whether you want that agreement to come back to you or whether you just want an agreement drafted that reflects what was in the motion. So if you could give us guidance on that.
I would amend my motion to authorize the mayor or administration to negotiate whether we
Second still saying, okay. Thank you.
Just one observation. Isaac reminds me that as we've talked with the Covey Center staff about the Miss Provo pageant, they do have some legitimate hard costs in terms of staffing the evening that is done with part-time people that they would not bring in unless they had a paying customer. And so we may want to talk at some point about, trying to figure out exactly what that is and where the money comes from. But that may be something we would need to do in addition to the 5250. But again, it's not tens of thousands of dollars, but it might be a few $1,000s. And so we'll try to get back to you on that. But again, I would hesitate to give away the balance of your $10,000 until we really have kind of figured that out. So if you're okay, just kind of hanging in while we get you some more information on that.
So the motion would be that we allocate 5250 to scholarship and the remainder remain in the budget.
Right, remain in the budget until we can figure out we don't want to put the Covey at a general fund disadvantage where you're increasing your subsidy for their purposes. And so again, we don't want to do it through the back door, I guess.
And if it's helpful, I can try to reach him right now and get kind of his, I know what, find out the rack rate, but maybe there's a wholesale, rate that he needs just to cover his costs. And then maybe you could even just allocate that budget to go to the Covey as part of your donating the Covey rather than him just having to bear that.
If you could comment on this, I want to say from past documents that I've dug through, the number that sticks in my head is about $3,000 is what we have said was the cost of Covey Center for that evening.
That sounds about right. It might have been like $31.25 or something, but that sounds about right.
But we don't know if that's the retail or the wholesale.
Yeah, and you probably prefer retail, but yeah.
It looked like it was a few things. It was definitely personnel, but then there were a few other costs. The website actually breaks down when you want to schedule the Covey Center for an event. They actually have a breakdown of a few of the different costs. I can't remember what all of those were, but personnel was a big part.
And yeah, he falls under kind of my chain, and I've sensed his displeasure when we've kind of tried to let him be the one who bears the brunt of these things. So I know he would welcome if you paid full freight, and we appreciate that. And I can. We can always tweak it later if you want to just make a rough decision now.
Advantages of that drops $2,500.
It's probably not normal because I just sent it.
Also, Karen Tapani just reminded me that Miss Provo's ticket sales also helps offset some of the Covey Center costs, but it's been unclear to us about whether the ticket sales, like if the $3,100 is like including the Miss Provo sales offsetting the cost, or if it doesn't. So anyway, they might cover more than we think with those ticket sales.
All right. Any other discussion?
Just to make sure I'm clear, so we're talking about we're no longer going to be administratively responsible.
That is still working out the details. Gary's still working on that, but it appears that we're moving in that direction.
Does what we decide about the funding for the dollars affect that at all? Or is that independent? I mean, what is that? I guess I just want to make sure I'm clear on what I'm voting for or against.
Right. I would like to make another motion or a substitute motion, alternative motion, but yeah. So I believe motion.
I want to be clear about what it is we're deciding is our official relationship to the Miss Provo organization, the float, and those related issues that we talked about before.
Okay.
And how this component of the scholarship money fits in or doesn't, or is independent of that. Does that make sense?
Mr. Richardson, were you looking to make a comment on that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I didn't know if you were wanting to jump in.
I am, this has been a difficult issue to deal with. I think right now, with some of the changes that Provo is going through, and with the narrative situation, I'm comfortable with giving them a chance. I wonder if we need to talk about our committee questions. What is Provo speaking about? Are we just going to be sponsored, sponsored for the or what do we got to add? I personally would like to have them become more and more self-sufficient. And we are sponsored for scholarship. That's maybe something that I have to consider. As far as the actual running of the program, I would like them to become more independent. And then we can get a contract like something we're working on so that we can get a return on our investment. I don't know that was the question. We could actually give away scholarships. If I remember right. There was some concern. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, I raised that in one meeting where we talked about this idea of gifting taxpayer funds, and that's precisely why I think this agreement is so important, because one of the provisions in the support agreement actually obligates them contractually to show up at our events, and so I think in this version or in this draft agreement as we continue to negotiate it, I think we can articulate what the exchange of value is in a way that satisfies that concern, as long as we actually have an agreement and they have an obligation to do something for us.
So let me see if I can answer Mr. Henley's question or address it. My understanding is the administration is proposing that they will take on the float. They will, renovate it or beautify it, work on the theme every couple of years or whatever. They will drive it. They will store it. They'll take it on completely. And then separately, the proposal, as I understood it, was the 50/50 sponsor of scholarships, and now we're working. It won't be with the council office anymore. It will either be with the administration, or if we can work it out with Freedom Festival. Freedom Festival will take over the administration of the program. So that's my understanding of what the mayor's proposal is. And so with that, I'd like to make a substitute motion that we, for this coming year, that we sponsor the scholarship using a contract as we're working on for the 5250, but that's the extent of our support of the program, and they're welcome to book and use the Covey Center through that. So the extent would be the 5250, and then the remainder of that amount could be used in the budget as we've discussed for these other things. So that's my, did that make sense, that kind of proposal?
Yes, and I'll second that, and that was actually what I was about to amend my motion, because as I think back, I think the mayor actually only did ask for the 5250, and the Covey Center kind of came up later, so.
I'll withdraw my substitute. Oh, unless.
Or I'll second whichever one goes.
I seconded.
Okay, you seconded, okay, I won't withdraw it, then let's move forward with that. Any discussion on the new the substitute motion, which is to limit the support to the 5250s?
As you understand, it's 42,750 goes back into the pot. Right, Dustin?
Sorry, what was that?
42,750 goes back into the pot for you to use.
Basically.
What
Yes, unless there are other hard costs that we're gonna cover through the Covey Center, using those funds as well.
Whatever that works
We have the
out,
option.
you can put someone else in that.
Right, if the mayor decides that she wants to do that, and we can address that.
Question.
Mr. Connect.
So, is that the Covey Center situation, that they would have to raise the money on their own? What's the year?
But it's, yeah, it's, it would be in the budget.
And, so what's the response, I mean, I know what the mayor thinks, but is the, we still have someone in charge of Miss Provo, but they're gonna be handing it over, so maybe they have an opinion at this point?
To the administration?
No, I mean, the current administration will be taking it over, but it's still in the hands of, who's running it right now?
Sorry, so the council office has been in charge of coordinating with this Provo organization. So this Provo organization still has their current leadership unless they choose to make changes.
Right, so how does the current leadership feel about raising money? Is that a viable thing?
We've had some conversations with them, I think mostly in here, but maybe some in leadership. Mr. Winterton?
Yeah.
So Mr. Connect is just asking if we know how the Miss Provo organization would feel about our current motion, which is to fund at the 5250 the scholarships and have that be the extent of our support.
I think that they would always want to get what they could, and I think they would be satisfied at this point with the 5250.
And that was my general feeling as well. I just didn't want to, I'm glad that someone else feels that way as well. That obviously they would like more, but they appreciate what they can get is what my understanding was from these kind of conversations before.
I think they have been so focused on the flow. I think if you release them, I think they'll be able to maybe focus some of their efforts on fundraising rather than having to deal with the flow that the city is willing to take on that. I think that would be also a big help to them.
Okay, in the interest of time, unless there's any burning comments, I will call for a vote on the motion. All in favor?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Winterton. Any opposed? Well, that was unanimous. So thank you all for that. We now have a scheduled 10-minute break, and because we did make up that time, thank you everyone for your efforts on that. Let's take a 5-minute break. It never happens. We'll take a 6.5-minute break. Start the meeting, start the recording, and we're moving on to item number 5, a discussion on Bulldog Blvd construction. I'm going to stall for another 30 seconds just to just read the purpose of the discussion. Bulldog Blvd has a crash rate 7.5 times higher than the statewide average for similar roadways. Studies show that installing center medians and removing unexpected mid-block movements significantly reduces traffic incidents. The intent of the project is to prepare for increased traffic while providing a safer travel experience for all modes of transportation. The intended outcome for our discussion is provide the council with an update on the project and any ramifications, unintended consequences that may arise from the changing of the project scope. I believe specifically council has had some questions on what the public process has been, and opportunities for public input, where we're at, what the projected timeframe is going to be, schedule going forward, and maybe touch a little bit on the original impetus. Oh, and if we could touch on funding as well, where the funding is coming from for the projected funding is coming for this project. So with that, time over to Mr. Graves to lead us out, and then so we have at least one other presenter as well.
All right. Appreciate the opportunity to come back and discuss this project. We're going to give a little bit of a history. Leah Armiel, who's our public information consultant for the project, will be talking about kind of the process, the public process that has occurred with the project and some of the history associated with that. And then I'll kind of help and follow up with some of the questions, particularly related to the funding and some of those other issues.
Yes, Mr. Stewart.
How much time is given left for motions and discussion on motions? We had to discuss, we had presentations. I just wasn't sure we had enough time for motions and discussion of those motions. It's all going to be taken by presentation then.
No, that's it.
I can do this in 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yeah, so we'll just take 5 minutes or so, and then we'll leave the bulk of the time for questions.
And if we could pause for just a little, I've been out of the country and I've been in different meetings, so sometimes I forget where things are discussed. Did we have have we already had discussion on some of what I just talked about? Do we, did we have a very, have we already had that discussion that I just kind of introduced in this meeting? Okay.
I was out of the country as well, so maybe you and I both. I mean, I was aware they discussed it.
Can you switch to the other PowerPoint and I can just talk you through it super quickly?
Let's do that. And then there were just a couple points that I wasn't sure if were broadly known about the history of this, but if we've already covered that, then yeah, let's have a 5-minute recap, and then we can move right into the discussion.
So this is a PDF, so we're just going to scroll down through it. It's a PDF of the slides. This information, it should go page by page. So this is the planned footprint. The project is proposing to convert an existing lane in each direction to a buffered bicycle lane. If you scroll down, we can talk a little bit about the project history. Next one. Maybe it's catching up with you. No? Try the.
Sure.
I have some very nice graphics there. We began the project in 2013 when Bulldog Blvd was identified as part of the bicycle master planning process in 2013. It was identified as a preferred route for the bicycle master plan, and when that moved forward, Provo City Engineering began looking at the traffic data and other things, as engineering typically does when some request is put forward in the master planning process. They started looking at crash information, and we found that the crash rate on itself on Bulldog Blvd is 3 times higher than the state average. And the severe crash rate, which are crashes that leave a permanent or life-changing injury, that's a severe crash, are 7.5 times higher than on comparable roadways in the state. So that triggered some discussion amongst Provo City, UDOT, and MAG regarding safety funds. Additionally, there have been 69 bicycle crashes on the corridor since 2010. And that has also motivated some of the MAG funding for safety. So there are a couple of safety improvements. The first is the center medians. Those are intended specifically to prevent angle crashes. That's where someone turning from the center turn lane is turning over multiple lanes of traffic coming in the opposite direction. The other safety improvement is the buffer on the bike lane, and that is to provide a designated space that's physically separated from vehicular traffic for bikes. So those are the two major safety improvements. Obviously, it seems it's a bit counterintuitive. I would say 99% of our transportation projects are to add capacity or to maintain the existing number of lanes and fit other features in. So the nature of this project is very different in that we are converting a through lane for cars to bike lanes. But the traffic counts show, including the projections for 2040, so projected growth by MAG, show that the total projected number, annual average daily traffic counts are under 35,000, which is what is necessary for a 4-lane road. So what that's saying in the non-technical term is that 2 lanes in each direction are adequate to serve the projected 2040 numbers of vehicles, meaning that converting the through lane to a bike lane should not create a significant delay in traffic. The models are showing, we've done 2 traffic studies on the project, which began in, the first study was in 2014. We reassessed that traffic study again in 2017, and both of those studies are showing delays of less than a minute westbound in the evening commute, which is the peak of the peaks on this roadway. So the projected delay for the morning commute at 2 lanes is about 4 seconds. The projected delay in the evening westbound is about 40 seconds. That is accomplished by making some other changes on the project as well. So we're adding westbound dual left turn lanes to 5th West. We're going to do what's called a right turn overlap, which is westbound at State Street, 5th West. There's a free right turn now, but a lot of people don't know that it's a free right turn because the intersection is a little bit offset. So we're going to be adding a right turn arrow signal. And the overlap part of that is that turn will be allowed to go as long as there's no conflicting movements. So there will be additional turn time there to help clear that queue. And that is one of the things we heard when we first went out in 2014 to talk to businesses there, that queue was causing the most significant traffic congestion throughout the day. It was blocking all the way to the State Farm. So across where the coffee pod used to be, the gas station, across by Chick-fil-A and Cubby's, and in that area of the River Grove shopping complex. So that was an area of real concern that we heard from a lot of folks. So this right turn overlap is intended to help clear that queue, and that's what keeps the projected delay at about 40 seconds. Other things that we're doing are extending some of the turn lanes, adding a couple of designated right turn lanes, I believe dedicated right turn lanes where they don't exist currently. And that's designed to sort of mitigate the delay. So it does cause some delay. It's not a significant amount of delay. And I think from the engineering perspective, Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the team felt that was a reasonable compromise, a short amount of delay in order to build buffers that can prevent these kinds of severe accidents and the high number of bike accidents that we're seeing. So in terms of, can you see if you can get the 4th page? Now, we tried to scroll too fast and it got confused. I don't know. Okay, so here we go. So we started, like I said, in 2013 and 2014 was the first traffic study. In 2015, we went out door to door. We spoke with all the property owners and businesses that were existing there at that time. We made a couple of presentations to TMAC and the City Council. Then nothing happened for a little while engineering was working with the other entities to secure funding. We began project design in September. We looked at the traffic study again, and then the mini target was proposed sort of in the winter time, so the project went on hold. for a little while we looked at assessing how to best accommodate access to that River Grove shopping complex. We resumed the project design and started meeting again as a team in March of 2018. Once that assessment was done for the target, and also with changes to accommodate potential future reuse of the Provo High School property. So the traffic study accounts for sort of what could be a best or worst case scenario, depending on how you want to look at it. From a traffic perspective, redevelopment of the Provo High School property as a commercial property is a worst case scenario because it will generate more traffic. So to be conservative in the estimates of how this would impact the roadway, they assumed a lot of traffic going to that Provo High School redevelopment. And so that was also sort of re-accomplished in that February, March timeframe. And then we went out to have our public meeting. So we went, I think you can go to the next slide, that kind of breaks down what we've been doing in the last 6 months. So in the last couple of months and where we're going now. So in April and early May, we went out again along the corridor to talk to all the property owners, share with them that the project was resuming. There were no real changes from the initial project concept, so we went back out. We held our open house in May 21st. We had a little bit over 30 days for public comment, which is the 30 days is required by the environmental clearance document. We added some time because we wanted to make sure that we were allowing public comment before our first update to you in June. So public comment ended June 8th. We have this week responded to all of the comments, and the team is ready to either start assessing the public comment that we're getting or wait for direction here from council. So if you switch to the other document, I have a quick little table that shows the public comment we received. Yep, scroll to the bottom of that page. Oh my gosh. This table right here shows the breakdown of the public comment we have received through June 12th. So we did, there may be 10 additional comments that came in after the June 8th deadline. This is the breakdown across the top. You can see, I would say we're about 80. I'm not going to estimate numbers. I'm a communications person. That's not my job. But I can tell you that the things that people like are the improved safety, the better access for bikes and other kinds of travel. The things that people are worried about are the number of lanes, additional delay and congestion. I will say again, I think it's counterintuitive to people because we generally don't take lanes away. We generally add lanes. So if you sit in traffic on Bulldog Blvd and you experience congestion, it seems like this project will make it work. And it's hard to understand that the engineering numbers, the data isn't showing that. So our experience versus the data can make that hard for people to believe. So I think that's the breakdown that we're seeing. Dave can maybe talk more engineering wise about why that is, why it feels like such a congested area, even though we can see by the numbers that it fits within a 4-lane road. There's some issues with north-south signals versus east-west signal timing and things like that in Provo, but that's the breakdown. Did that cover the history? And yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Have you been able to account for repetitive comments from the same people?
So these comments are by respondent only. So these are individual, these numbers are individual commentors.
So the respondent responds 2 or 3 times, which has happened, right? So I looked at it, you can account for that.
Sure. So these are,
because I mean, some of the comments I got with food safety were the same person saying it in food safety 2 or 3 times.
right. So we only accounted, these numbers are the individual respondent name.
Thank you.
Just for the record, can you state your name one more time?
Sure. My name is Leah Jaramillo. I am the communications manager for the project.
Great, thank you.
All right, so let me just give a little bit of other information, you know, as we start to have this discussion. We talked 2 weeks ago about, what would happen if a change was made to the scope of the project at this point in time. I had a conversation with MAG and asked what the process that we would need to go through in order to make a change. And they indicated that what we would do is we would bring back a proposed modified project to MAG. They would do an assessment of that. They would, when we take an initial project, they always do a scoring thing for different items to see how the project relates or rates as far as providing for vehicles, pedestrians, safety, air quality, a whole bunch of other items. And so they would repeat that process based on a new scope for the project. At that point, the project would for sure go back to the technical advisory committee for a recommendation on a scope change. It's, not clear whether or not, that's, the project would be presented on its merits. Whether or not they would support a scope change, we wouldn't have a read until we actually went through that process. And depending on the amount of change to the project, as they did their scoring, MAG indicated that it may also need to go to the regional planning committee for a recommendation if the change were significant enough. And so at a minimum, we would have to go back through that process. MAG could take several actions. They could approve scope change and with no change in funding, all the way down to approving the scope change and not awarding any funding. So, so there's kind of that whole gamut. There are 3 different sources of funding for the project. And, there's federal highway safety improvement funds that are involved with the match. That is $1.5 million. There's MAG funds of $2,377,000. And then there's some federal urban road funds of $419,500. With the match for those 2, the MAG and the federal funds, that's another $3 million. It brings total funding to $4.5 million for the project. Okay.
How much is Provo City?
Our match is just under 7%. Okay, to date, there's been about 265,000 that's been expended on the project through the design and public information process for the project. If for some reason the project were determined that with a scope change didn't go forward, it would be necessary that the city would need to reimburse that money, if the project were not approved.
Okay, thank you. Let's get to the time for discussion and any motions. Mr. Stewart, waste off.
Right. I'm going to make a motion. I'd like to explain why. First of all, the current council elected in 2016 and the one elected in 2018 has not had a chance to go over this funding. The run by the council was 2015. As to the scope of the project itself, so that's the purpose for the making motion today is for us to have an opportunity to discuss it. I don't have a problem with the public process. I think it's been good. I think it just hasn't included this part of the public. So I think we need to express ourselves one way or the other as a council on this issue. That's only fair to our constituents. And secondly, my motion people I've talked to are not against necessarily the safety issues. So I wouldn't want any change in that at all. So I'll make a motion for the purpose of discussion. We'll hopefully having a vote on it. I move that the council formally recommend to the administration that the Bulldog Blvd project be amended to exclude from its scope, because that's what needs to be excluded from its scope, the reduction from 3 lanes to 2 and the addition of 5 lanes.
Can you say that last part just a little bit more slowly?
I move that the council formally recommend the administration that the Bulldog Blvd project be amended to include from its scope the reduction from 3 lanes to 2 and the addition of 5 lanes.
All right.
Heard by council. I appreciate having, the motion I think is in order. I have a very good motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Looking for a second.
For the purposes of discussion, I will second.
All right. We have a second by Mr. Connect.
Could I understand the reasoning?
I don't feel like, and I think many of my constituents don't feel like, the bike lanes are justified at this time, considering the amount of traffic, automotive versus bike. That's an issue we're gonna have to face, not only today, but future discussion we have about the streets, Fifth West, and other things.
So even though the numbers of accidents that we've heard about are involving bikers, and so this new proposal that you're suggesting would do nothing to improve the safety for the bikers, it doesn't seem like we have any evidence to believe that this proposal will address any of the safety issues.
But it addresses the safety issues in the medium, which is my experience. You sit down the Provo Boulevard, turning left or right off the medium.
So we're gonna go on your experience of the street to make it
I'm just making a motion
change to the
discussion. You don't
proposal?
have me personally.
Well, I'm just wondering where the data is coming from to have any sort of.
Honestly, I feel like bicycle traffic is not justified 2 lanes each way Boulevard.
And you're basing that on what? On what basis do you know that it's not justified? I mean, if they're providing us evidence that bikers are among the most common accidents on that street, that we should not respect the safety of bikers, is what I hear.
Bicycle traffic on that boulevard versus automotive traffic is minimal, considering automotive traffic. So to trade 2 automotive lanes for bicycle lanes where bicycles are maybe 1/100th, if that even, of the usage, that's a discussion we're gonna have to have in the future, not only today and in the future. Whether you trade bicycle lanes with very little usage compared to automotive usage.
I just don't know what you're using as your evidence that there's very little usage or that it's not worth that expense to provide that additional safety for the number of accidents that we're talking about here.
So let me jump in here. I'll ask D, because I believe there was some counts, so we do have some numbers there. And we do have our council handbook that talks about some formalities of making comments and whatnot. And if necessary, I may need to step in and follow that a little bit more. But if we can just, we're good so far. I just want to make sure that we stay good. So try to keep things personal as possible. Right. Anyway, let's just make sure that we keep the proper decorum here. So I will look. Do we have traffic counts? I believe there was a traffic count. It gave us the number of bicyclists and the number of vehicles that were through that point.
We don't have a count as far as the number of bicyclists, using the corridor, but we did have some counts from 2016 on Bulldog Blvd. There was approximately 26,000 cars a day that used that corridor. Just for a matter of comparison, yeah, 900 East at University Parkway, which is a 4-lane roadway, has almost the identical 26,000 cars a day. South State Street, south of 900 East Connection, there by the cemetery, also carries about 26,000 cars a day. So those three roadways were all, very similar in traffic counts. The only difference is that on Bulldog, there's 3 travel lanes in each direction compared to the other 2 roadways, 2 travel lanes in each direction. And so I think that's, from the technical side of things, where the model has looked at all of this and indicated that from a capacity standpoint, there really isn't a need for 3 travel lanes in each direction on Bulldog Boulevard. I think people have become used to it. They're accustomed to it, so it feels counterintuitive to them. But as far as from a capacity standpoint, the models indicate, and these models are projecting volumes out to 2040. Okay, and so when they start talking about delay and the number of vehicles, they're looking out 20, 25 years in the future to say that, we don't anticipate a problem at that point in time.
In answer to your question, George, it's counterintuitive to me, okay? Counterintuitive, that it's way in the future. I would rather wait, if it's going to be 20 to 25 years where it makes sense, then let's wait 10 years before we do it. Same thing with BRT. I mean, I had the same problem with BRTs. It's unusual for me to have this issue.
All right, so let me jump in, taking my chair or conductor's hat off. Let me just jump in real quick. I appreciate those numbers. So the numbers that we just got were talking about congestion, and what I get out of that, these are the numbers that we have today, and then also looking forward. But even the numbers that we have today, the 2 lanes in each direction is more than sufficient to carry the cars that we have now and into the future, and as evidenced by other roads that we're familiar with around Provo. A number that I thought I saw was 24 bicyclists in an hour. Was a count somewhere from someone.
We had those numbers
somewhere. No question, significant.
Shane Winter sent some stuff over to Clifford after our last meeting, and so it might have been there. I'm not sure.
The point is it is no question significantly lower, but the question isn't what is it needed more for capacity wise. It's because, to me, it's the 2 lanes in each direction is sufficient, and I understand it, right? I mean, some of the safety issues could be caused because we have 3 lanes, and so even just moving to 2 makes it safer. And then what do we do with that third? A good use for it would be put in bicycle lanes, not because it's comparable in numbers, but because that it completes a network that allows more people to use it, and it's not needed for the automobiles.
I appreciate the robust discussion. This is exactly what I wanted.
Good.
To hear what the different council members feel about it, because I think that's what our constituents deserve.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. I think it's Mr. Nix, and then we'll go after.
Okay. 2 points. Could you bring back the timeline with the arrows and the dates? And let's go to, that's the one I want. So on 2018, we have an open house. And I just kind of wish we'd had an open house before we had funding conversations with UDOT and MAG, before we got as far along as we are. The people that talk to me or that are opposed to this are partly concerned that this is kind of a done deal, that is to the point where there are no real changes or public comment that can really make a difference without causing major disruption to the whole process and expense. And so my concern is partly with the process, because if we don't have the right process, then the public feels disenfranchised, and that we're just doing things by committee, whether it's TMAC or MAG, and these small or outside entities are telling us how to live in Provo and change our quality of life and everything. So I'd just like to point out that trying to involve the public sooner in the process would probably be a lot better.
David, can I just make a comment? When I said I wasn't in the process of the public hearings you've had recently, I feel like you've done a really good job of taking input and having the meeting, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. I didn't mean to intend at all that it was a done deal. There's no way from her. My mind, but that's what my constituents feel.
Right. And so my other question, since we're having this kind of open discussion, is we had a rather positive project on South State Street with Mountain Lands doing like a 10-foot multi-use trail along the side. And to refresh my memory, is that supposed to be for bikes and pedestrians or just pedestrians? Right. So with that in mind, I drove down Bulldog the other day and I tried to envision it both ways. And I can see it both ways. But when I say both ways, one is where you give up a lane and turn it into a bike lane. And the other is, I wondered if you could expand the sidewalk, get enough property on the side to have created a bike lane and still have had the existing traffic lanes. But I don't know if that was explored.
The South State project also included bike lanes on the shoulders, so it basically removed the shoulders. They're dual functional, but the shoulders on that roadway are also bicycle lanes.
Right.
Okay, and so there's different levels of users out there. The thought on the trail on South State Street was the occasional user, the mother with her children, who aren't quite as comfortable out in traffic, have the ability to use the trail. The experienced cyclist, can use the shoulder of the road. Where a project like Bulldog Blvd with a buffered bike lane, it actually provides that separation where there is a positive barrier where all levels of vehicle users could potentially use the bike lane.
And isn't it also true that if with all of those egresses onto the street, when you combine bikers and pedestrians on a sidewalk, that's actually a formula for disaster in terms of safety? I mean, this is much safer. I think that's the problem, is that you end up with visibility issues that are really, really dangerous.
I think
Bikers
one
are
thing that
generally not supposed to be on sidewalks.
that we probably haven't stated before and probably should is that with that buffered bike lane, it actually provides some of that safety improvement as well, where it gets the travel lane away from the sidewalk, away from the curb, allows for better visibility for pedestrians on the sidewalks as well.
Okay. Good answer. Can we go back to the layout of the lanes and the widths of the lanes?
You scroll up one page, I think. Or I can do it. Okay, you grab it. Just use the up arrows. Oh, there you go.
Okay, so the bike lane is going to be how wide?
5.5 feet.
All right. So that gave rise to, we didn't really have a good answer, but when they do clear the snow, if they end up, all the road snow may end up in the bike lane, and then we have to figure out what to do with it.
So the buffer here provides an area where the snow from the road can go. Okay, and then you have, the curb area, the pan of the gutter curb where the snow from the bike lane can go.
Okay, so you'll be plowing that with different equipment. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Sewell. So I firmly believe this project will save lives. I just don't think there's any question about that. I worry about a successful motion to modify the project, take the bike lanes out, I think that would potentially jeopardize the funding. If I was a mayor in another city and I had a safety issue in my city and we rejected this project as currently proposed, there may be pressure for those funds to go elsewhere in the county. So I really worry about that. I do think a modified project would save some lives with the center median, but it wouldn't have the safety benefits for 5 years that this one does. I think there is a lot more potential for biking on this particular corridor leading right into RBYU. I know a lot of people are very hesitant to ride their bike on that road, and I would be too. I wanted to bike to work for a long time, but I've been scared too. And just a few months ago, I finally decided I'm going to start doing it. I only do it once a week because it is scary and it takes a long time. And I travel about 5 miles through Orem, and there are parts of it that are just not safe enough to. I have to go onto the sidewalk, and it slows me down considerably anytime I encounter a stretch like that. And then, as Mr. Hanley mentioned, there's sometimes issues with the pedestrians, and there's other types of safety issues that you run into if you're sort of being on the sidewalk. So I think this is a wonderful project for the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. Plus, it has some additional benefits beyond that. I think it will encourage biking and walking in this corridor. I think we'll see a dramatic increase in the number of bicycles through there once this is finished, and it'll just make for a beautiful, well-landscaped corridor. So I'm 100% behind it.
My thoughts on it, I'll echo those. I think this is a great project. I think when it's complete, the people that were concerned will realize that it functions for automobiles just as well and better, be safer. I think this is a home run project that everyone will love when they get to use it across the board. I would also like to echo though the concerns about process, and I don't want to point fingers. I just want everyone in the room just to kind of be aware that that there are concerns with the process that we use to get to these. And I think there was a comment before about, well, we needed to design it to the point where the public really had a good proposal to react to, and I understand that concern as well. When we work on our high-level plans, our bicycle master plan or whatnot, we're told don't get down into the weeds. I mean, yes, there's a lot of projects here, but look at it holistically. Don't nitpick and get into the details. But then sometimes we pass that, saying, okay, broadly as a policy point, we agree with this, and then the projects that we were asked not to get into the details on work their way through the process. And then it gets to us now, and we're told, well, hey, yeah, you can say no to this, but if you say no to this, we're going to have to reimburse all this money, and we're going to jeopardize this. And so somewhere, I don't know what the right balance is, but if we could be, as these projects start moving through, if we can get it, so we have some, so the public gets another chance for input, we get some chance, so we're not seeing it at the point where it's painful to say no, or it's painful to make adjustments. If we could see it earlier. I think this is a home run proposal, but I do think we could continue to improve our process. And yes, so I saw Mr. Hanley's hand for that.
I want to apologize to my good friend, Mr. Stewart, for I know you're a tough hombre, so but I apologize for handling it the way that I did. I shouldn't have done that. I do think you're right that this is good to have this conversation. I do think it's good for the public. I just want to echo the support for this project. I think it's a fabulous project. I think what I love the most about it, in addition to the things that have been said, is the sort of the thought that somebody coming down from Orem, from State Street or whatever, comes into a different town, a different feel. Bulldog is not that different town, different feel from what State Street is in Orem. It's the same thing. It's the same model of this excessively wide street with strip malls, no vegetation. I mean, so I'm talking not just in addition to the safety issues, which I think are primary. I think there's real great opportunity for a beautiful entry point into the city, into the community in a way that we should be proud of and should embrace.
Mr. Harding, your comment reminded me that I had meant to echo Mr. Pinnock's concern as well. I would have loved to have seen this project introduced to the public more broadly several years ago, so that it wasn't as much of a surprise. I think that it could have been better received if we made more effort early on.
And let me just run that. I mean, I think there are definitely difficulties and there's reasons, I think, on the administration, and you're welcome to chime in here as well, but there are sometimes funding isn't sure, you know, there's a lot of reasons, and
We could certainly have done a better job of keeping up to date. Now, just let me say in defense of the administration, no capital improvement project was more blogged about than this one by Mayor Curtis on the mayor's blog. Received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of views back then, many positive comments. So again, I'll grant you there was a gap, and that's something we should not let happen again. But I would not want to say that the project's been done somehow in a corner. It's been widely known and widely debated in the city for several years. And it has been in every capital improvement plan we brought you, and every annual capital improvement report we brought you. And so again, from that perspective, it maybe hasn't been as high a profile, but it's certainly not been any effort to have it not be a visible project.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
I think part of that way is it's been there.
Yeah.
And we just kind of.
Yeah, it's easy to do. Yeah,
that's going to happen someday, and all of a sudden, oh, it's happening now.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. We certainly could have done a better job of that.
And from, I live where a lot of my constituents are against this project because they figure they're going to have more congestion getting from Columbia Lane to BYU or anywhere like that. And I think we have to trust the engineers and say, yeah, they know what they're doing, and the traffic studies know what they're doing, and that's kind of how I've responded to them. There are some things, it's harder when you say we've got a home run here. I'm not quite sure it's a home run. Maybe a double, easy double. I think there's some real problems still getting that parking lot behind Chick-fil-A, Cubby's, Macy's, and Target. That's going to be, and adding that light on 4th West. Right to the gas station now. That'd be great for the hospital, and maybe that had a big influence on why we're doing that. But the other side, traffic coming and going in that already congested area, I think is just going to be problematic, and we'll probably have to deal with that some way, somehow. The other concern I had is, and I can't see it on this plan, but it seemed like as you look on the north side of the road, there are just a whole bunch of little short dividers. There's a whole bunch of driveways. The south side of the road, I think, is really good because it's a hospital, so we have a set driveway. Then we have the shopping strip for that next block, but then the Provo High School that lets it be a long, right? So I think it accomplishes its purpose well. The other side, I think we're still going to have, I think there's going to be cars not knowing if they're in a driveway or if they're in a divided part or a buffer part. I think it's going to be problematic. I think we'll still have some problems there. And then I have a question. As you come off State Street, heading north, you're turning right onto Bulldog. Right now, the reason there's a third lane right there is to take that right-hand turn lane, so it doesn't back up into State Street. I mean, it wasn't really to increase traffic volume. It was to get the traffic off State Street. And so I can't remember what the design is now to solve or to.
The right turn lane will still be maintained northbound.
But it doesn't go, it goes on to one of the 2 lanes, right?
It'll go through the signal into the 2 lanes.
So there's really no place for those right-hand turns coming off State Street onto Bulldog except just on one of those two designated lanes.
They'll have to either wait for a gap in traffic or a green.
So the backup problem on a State Street could be a reality. So I think there are just some areas there that we're solving some problems, and there's still problems that aren't gonna go away. And then I just think, have we done any analysis on what the added burden on budget to maintain all the landscaping on that? That's gonna be an increase in the Parks and Rec budget, and then how are we gonna fund that?
I don't believe that we've really done an analysis on that.
I think it's gonna be substantial.
The intent is that the landscape design will be not intensive to maintain. It's not like we're going to be going out pulling weeds every day and those kinds of things. I think it's intended, and again, particularly for the buffered bike lanes, one of the concerns will be the comparative height of the landscaping, because you got to still maintain visibility through. So again, I don't think we've defined that yet, but again, we don't know what the landscape design is either.
So the grass and the trees isn't set in concrete.
It's not going to be grass out in any of those.
So it's not gonna be grass.
Not going to be shrubs, trees, ground cover.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we are now 30 minutes behind, so even with the continuation, we're pressing. So, any other comment? Otherwise, we are going to move to vote on the motion. Okay, so can we get a recap on the motion?
So Mr. Stewart moved that the council formally recommend to the administration that the Bulldog Blvd project be amended to exclude from its scope the reduction from 3 lanes to 2 lanes and the addition of bike lanes. And that was seconded by Mr. Connect.
All right, so I will call all in favor, please indicate. And those opposed, please indicate. Mr. Winterton, are you with us? So that was
Yeah.
Yes.
I had been before the motion to oppose it. I thought it was necessary that we had a motion, but we had a discussion, we had a vote.
Thank you.
all.
Excellent. And with that, we will move to item 6, a discussion on the approval of a governing body participation agreement with CPACE. We have this listed at 15 minutes, and we're going to hold to that 15 minutes, so if you will.
Let's try to do it in 2.
Let's do it in 2. Excellent. Mr. Jones.
I don't think there's much here to discuss. I could be wrong, but basically, if you remember the last time we discussed this, the motion that was passed was actually that the administration go back to the Governor's Office of Economic Development and negotiate an agreement that they feel comfortable with and bring it back to the council for approval. That agreement was negotiated. I was involved in that. Wayne and others worked on it. In maybe a little bit of a jumping the gun, we actually signed the agreement. I think some of us forgot that was what the motion actually was. So this is just a briefing that we're bringing it back for actual approval of the agreement, and it's on evenings for a resolution to ratify the mayor's signature. And really, the only changes to the agreement from the previously entered into agreement is the language about solar projects that was deleted in the first go around has been added back in, and other changes were made to bring the agreement into line with state code that has been updated in the meantime. So that's really all I have to present, and then I can answer any questions if there are any.
Comments or questions? Excellent. Very well done, Mr. Jones.
It's probably the only 2-minute item I've ever done.
Moving on to item number 7. A discussion on proposed Provo City Code amendments to the Government Records Access and Management Act. And this will be presented by Peter Williams, our Senior Assistant City Attorney, and our City Recorder, Ms. Markenbrack.
The Government Records Access and Management Act, frequently referred to as GRAMA, is a 52-page
statute in our state code. In our current city code, it's a 20-page ordinance. The proposed revision reduces our city ordinance to about 4.5 pages by essentially adopting the state code provisions with the exception of some which clarify the application to our mayor council form of government. Just the highlights of what the revision does, apart from cutting down the ordinance and just the bulk of the code of one kind or another we have to deal with, is that it makes our ordinance compliant with state code by providing the composition of the appeals board that is compliant with a change to the state statute that occurred about 2 years ago. Our statute was adopted in '92. It was revised in 2006, and in the last 5 years, there have been some significant revisions to the state code. So it would be important that we bring our code consistent. It also clarifies how we can have those who are requesting records identify themselves as the subject of the record. This is important to several provisions about the GRAMA statute in which someone who's a subject of a record can get a private record or a protected record. So we need a mechanism by which someone can identify themselves, and this provides for that. So those are the highlights. Are there questions? Amanda may want to add.
So I just wanted to explain why these changes are so important right now. This is something that's been worked on, I believe, for 1.5 years by Camille and Brian and the rest of the legal, Robert. So it's been ongoing, but because of the volume of requests I'm receiving right now, it's really important to have clear instruction and clear guidance on this. And between the very large state statute and what we had in the code, it was somewhat confusing, especially when we're dealing with so many different departments, as you can see here. When I'm trying to communicate with the individuals in those departments and explain what governs GRAMA, it can be really confusing. So I appreciate their efforts in getting this through, and we're just working through these requests as quickly as possible. And they are changing. It's been interesting to watch just even since I've been in the job. The complexity has changed. It's very issue driven. If we have something happen that comes up in the media, I'll get 3 requests later that afternoon. So it's evolving, and I'm looking forward to these changes. Additionally, we are also implementing some changes to the fees that will be included in the budget. I look forward to that as well. Right now, I can only charge $10 an hour for my work. So if I spend 40 hours working on a request, we're not collecting very much. We're not even recouping the cost of my time. So I appreciate the efforts and look forward to this.
So who said that $10?
I believe that $10 was set in 2006.
Set in our prior ordinance.
In our ordinance?
Right.
Oh, so the state didn't set it for us.
What state code provides is that you can only charge the hourly wage of the lowest paid qualified person to do the job, and not for the first 15 minutes of the time. So in order to account for that, what the consolidated fee schedule says in the new draft, it says the rate allowed by statute. So instead of fixing it at just $10, we're going to switch to doing it by the employee who's doing the work.
I provided John with an example earlier today of a request I did that I believe was 55 hours. So under our current ordinance or code, we can only charge $550. But if we were to actually charge for my time and the time of those who prepared the records, I want to say, John, do you have that number? Somewhere closer to 1,200, 1,300.
1234, yeah.
So big difference.
So just help me understand this. So if someone submits a request and has to indicate, yes, I'm willing to pay, I understand this is how we calculate it. We do the work, we come back and say, hey, we got it collected. If you want it, you need to pay the $1,200. Or I mean, how do we let them know an estimate of what's going to cost before we do all of that work?
Typically, if it's something I can easily turn around under 15 minutes, a contract, something that I already have access to that I don't have to segregate protected private information from, there are no fees associated with those. So oftentimes that's the case. If it's a large request, I'll usually get in contact with the other departments, find out what it would take to prepare the record.
and get an idea of how much reduction will be required, and then present them with an idea of how much it will cost. We are allowed under the state statute to collect, if it's over $50, I believe, we can collect a deposit up front. So usually if it's a substantial amount, we'll get a down payment and start doing the work from that point on. And if we were to overcharge, we would of course credit that back to them at the end. Anything else?
This gets particularly tricky, for example, when we get a request for body cam footage from our police department, because it's, in some cases, confidential information is shared at a traffic stop or a door, knocking on the door and having somebody respond. And again, that redaction has to occur with our contractor, who may or may not be able to get it done. And then it's, we're not paying our staff to do it. We actually have out-of-pocket cost to the body cam folks. And so again, when Amanda talks about increasing complexity, what used to be a copy of a traffic citation or police report now has become video documentation. And that gets, again, it gets tricky and expensive and time consuming. So many of the appeals that I see that come to the mayor's office for, appeal of a time constraint or appeal of, we have refused to release the document because it's a protected record, then we have to go through, additional gyrations to even deal with those. So it is getting certainly more complicated, and there are more things subject to GRAMA than we used to have subject to.
Just a couple questions about the thing. I guess the first is a comment, but happy to see that council is not looking at histogram of apartments. Not sure how that played out. We're not even on that list. I guess that's a really good thing. The question, the second to last bullet point, requests from solicitors increasing. Are those like attorney solicitors, or is that?
These are people from marketing companies, especially solar companies right now, are often contacting us for information about our solar permits. We had one that Daniel Softly handled the other day where someone was requesting the names, phone numbers, and email addresses, business email addresses of all city employees. And they're of course using this to market, and those are really increasing.
And do we have to release that information?
Typically, the one for the HR contact or the employee contact, that was spelled out very clearly that was public data. So we did provide that. The solar permits also.
That sounds like something that should be addressed by the legislature.
And it's hard to say, are you a solicitor? I mean, oftentimes it's just, I can tell by the email address or the reasoning behind the request. I got one just the other day for GIS map layers. And so who knows what they're wanting to do with that, but I'm sure it's not a news article.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
The other request we're getting very frequently is all emails between this elected official and several other named people, or we had a request for all of the calendar appointments for some people in community development who they met with for a
2-week period, or 3-year period actually.
Yeah, 3-year period.
Yeah.
And so part of what we do is try to get them to be specific about the information. We try to get them to narrow their request to a reasonable amount. And so those are all hours that I don't know have ever been charged, just the back and forth with the requester. But I think it's important that the council understand that this has become very costly to the city because we haven't been able to charge what requesters are actually costing the city.
Any other questions?
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that presentation. And on to, I'll get closer to the end. On to item 8. That's discussion on the Provo City Code amendments to the deputy recorder position. I guess we'll be starting out with Ms. Morgan.
Yes, this was something that was just kind of, I actually think when the ordinance was updated a number of years ago, that it was kind of done by accident. But right now, we've had some situations where when Amanda's gone or the city recorder's out and we need some documents signed, the way that it's currently written, it has to be the city recorder. And it's just, people go on vacation, people get ill, and so we really feel like there's an important need for a deputy. And it did actually outline in the current ordinance, the concept of having a deputy recorder, an ad hoc deputy recorder that could be filled in, but it wasn't included in the upper section. It was included in just a couple of the items that the recorder does. So what we're proposing is that we just include that language for all the duties, and because things just happen and it's important. And so I think this is a simple change. It's important. The other thing that we feel strongly about is that we may even want to have 1 or 2 deputies, and that it wouldn't actually be included in their title, so that we would need to increase their compensation. It would just be something where they could just step in and fill in, and Amanda would always make sure that the person's adequately trained. And so we think this is just an important change that probably wasn't intentional originally, but that's kind of what we're recommending. So do you have any questions for me or Amanda about it? Okay, thank you. Thanks for Brian. Brian helped us quite a bit with this too.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for this meeting, which you addressed that. We will just expect to see this at some future council.
Both 7 and 8 are intended to come to July 10th meeting.
Yep. Thank you. All right, on to number 9. So this was a scheduled discussion on the proposed resolution to adopt amendments to the general plan text for the general plan update. The presentation was going to be by our executive director, Mr. Strachan, who, as was announced earlier, is out due to some family reasons. And so I will look for a motion to continue this item to a future work meeting, as well as continue the item in tonight's council meeting and we would like to move it to the 17th of July when Mr. Strachan is expected to be back.
I move that we move it to the 17th of July because we need to hear this with Cliff back. But I almost wonder if we might consider advertising it differently than to say that it's a general plan update when we are explaining, like we talked earlier, Bryce, this really is not updating anything, because typically an update is a course correction. It's a review. It's a change. And we're not changing the policies. We're not making course corrections. We're not discussing and evaluating the policies. We're combining what was already done by the 2030 process and committees, and we're combining what's been in the general plan for years. And it's basically a huge housekeeping project, which then, when that's done, makes it easier for someone to go in and actually do a review and update. And I'd also like to point out that the update is supposed to be every 5 years. I think the last one officially was done in 2010. And Wayne, help me out here, and Brian, but we came to the 2015 timeframe of doing another big update. And as I remember it, Gary McGinn said, well, why don't we do it kind of neighborhood by neighborhood? And so we started embarking on this plan of redoing the neighborhood plans rather than just kind of everything at once. So we have had neighborhood plans done. I brought the southeast one, and we sure want to do that. But for those that are concerned that there are new policies, new direction being introduced at this point, I don't see it. Everything that I have looked at is just a combination of what's already there. So there's a fair amount of confusion even amongst the Planning Commission about what is happening here and our intent and the process. And so anything we can do to clarify that, either retitling it or remessaging it. I think we need to do that so that we're sending the right message.
Okay, so let me try to restate your motion and then we'll look for a second. So the motion is to move this item, to continue this item on the 17th of July, continue the one on our evening meeting to the 17th of July, to consider a change to the item title.
The title and the purpose of discussion, or whatever description we have with it.
Okay, both the title and the description. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Mr. Stewart. Is there
Discussion question about it. Yeah, is there any sort of, I mean, have we been calling it an update for the past little while? Is this is that going to create its own kind of public perception problem? I mean, I agree that there's misunderstanding about what this is. Frankly, I'm not sure I understood it all that well. You know, and I've been trying to get clarification by talking to a variety of different people, but I mean, I don't know if this is semantics, Brian, you can help us on this. I mean, if you're updating any language in the general plan, I mean, in theory, that's an update no matter what you're doing. But if what Dave's saying is, you know, this isn't, in other words, if we intend for this to go back to the Planning Commission, if we intend for a thorough and fair process in which this gets vetted, that maybe has been a little bit uneven up to this point because of the particular nature of what we're doing, which is a little bit different than normal, then I think all of that needs to be clearly explained to people, because the perception, I think, was this looked like an attempt to make a major change to the general plan without proper process happening. And if that's not what we're doing, then we need to make sure that everyone understands that. Anyway, I'm curious to know what you're.
I think the confusion arises from the fact that both in the city code and state code, there is a term called a comprehensive general plan update. That's a term that occurs in the code. And so by using the term here, general plan update, I think many people have kind of grabbed onto that and interpreted that this was meant to be a comprehensive general plan update, the 5-yearly general plan update, comprehensive general plan update.
I mean, it's a kind of precursor to that.
It's
right?
we're
trying to do that.
It's a precursor to that, and frankly, I guess I'll also say that although state code clearly contemplates that the most common avenue for a comprehensive general plan update to happen is for the Planning Commission to start it, there's nothing in the code that says that's the only way it can start. So I don't think that it's a violation or an improper process, even if this were a comprehensive general plan update, for the council to have started. But I think that Mr. Connect is correct that that's not actually what it is. And to the extent that that's not what it is, I think it's followed the same process that any text amendment proposed by the council follows, which is council says, hey, I think a text amendment is needed. Staff, we work on making a text amendment. We take it to the Planning Commission. We bring it back to us. So, you know,
Follow the text.
for my purposes, I think you could say a discussion on proposed amendments to the general plan, and you could end it there, or you could add something clarifying, like to incorporate vision to incorporate Vision 2030 in the general plan.
Yeah, I mean, you're arguing that it isn't actually an amendment, so that's maybe not the right word.
Well, it is an amendment, in the sense that it is amending the text. It's not.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's amending policy is a separate question, but it is amending the text.
So the Planning Commission notice called it an update. So I think that's probably where we got started on that, but I don't think we have to keep the same language that was used in the Planning Commission.
And so I'm leaving that open, you know, whatever you think is the best way to advertise it. But regardless of how you title it, if there's going to be any discussion and description of what's happening, it needs to be clear. This is just housekeeping. It's combining two things, and there's nothing new being added. Any real review of policy changes or directions and decisions will be made later through a yet to be determined process. And I would point out that,
Could we make that process,
uh,
sketch it out a little bit?
well, that's a good question, and I don't necessarily want to say what that process would be, but George, I brought this along, you got this started, this is my 1997 copy of the general plan, and I served 3.5 years on the Task Force 2000, and that was a committee of 30 residents that were picked from various parts of the city to redo the general plan, and community development trained us. And I can't remember if they brought in outside personnel, but they trained us for up to 6 months on how to be citizen planners. And then we took it out to the public and held open houses to find out what the public wanted, what was their vision for the future. And our main contribution as a task force was to create the goals and the vision, which is really just several pages of this long document. The rest of it was prepared by community development. And then at the end, since I was the chair, I presented it to both the Planning Commission and to the council. The Planning Commission reviewed it, but that was really all they did. They didn't really get that involved in the process. So how you do it is flexible. And if somehow that was in violation of state statute and how we did it then, it's been 20 years. And if we, Brian, if there is some specified way by the state that we're supposed to do this, then we need to know that. But I doubt that the Planning Commission wants to spend a large portion of their lives doing it. So we need to find out, who's got the time and the expertise, and then you make sure that everyone's involved, but we rely heavily on staff.
So we have a motion and a second. So let's try to keep the comments focused on the motion. We'll allow a little bit of Mr. Sewell, and just time-wise, if we can, I think.
What are we trying to finish by 4 or ASAP?
I think sooner would be better than 4, but remember, we are missing a key member of the team that really spearheaded this. So I think maybe have a better discussion with him in the room. But with that,
So I would highly recommend that before we make a decision on this, that every council member do 2 things. Read the state statute, which is section 1098-403, general plan preparation. And second, watch the video of the Planning Commission. I've read this statute several times, and it talks about how the Planning Commission shall make and recommend to the legislative body. And then when it comes, and it doesn't talk about what goes on before that. How it gets to them, or how many citizens or staff. But they do, according to the way I read this, they do have the responsibility to recommend a general plan or an amendment to the general plan to the legislative body. Once it gets to us, then we can accept it, we can reject it, or we can amend it and adopt it, or we can reject it and send it back to them with our suggestions for them to take another look at it. I don't see anything in here that suggests that we could write an amendment that it has not been recommended by the Planning Commission.
And we haven't.
Well, I feel like we have. I feel like we gave them something, we asked them to rubber stamp it, and it's clear from the discussion that there are a few things in there they were uncomfortable with. They didn't really have time to look at it. So I think we should send it back to them, explain again that, it's a minor update, but if there's things in there that they're uncomfortable with, let them give us their recommendation on what those things are. And if they add something we don't like, we can take it out and pass it. If they take something out that we want in, we can put it back in and adopt it. But my understanding is that we're supposed to start from their recommendation.
if this was actually a comprehensive update where we're going to consider changes of policy, then fine, that would be appropriate. But we're not adding or subtracting anything in the way of policies or goals. It's in both documents, and we're bringing the two documents together so you can review it in one place. Now, everything that was listed in Shannon's email, I went through this morning and found every one of those things in either or both the Vision 2030 or the general plan. So I would suggest, we can do our homework, they need to go back and read the Vision 2030, they need to read our current general plan.
You can appreciate the position you put them in. I mean, they were given a matter of days.
Right.
So
Well,
the fact that they didn't have the time to do that, it should not be faulted. They shouldn't be faulted.
Right, but
I think there's enough ambiguity about what was actually happening and what was actually being asked that, I mean, I'm echoing what you're saying. I think we have to clarify what's happening, but I wouldn't just suggest that we clarify by retitling this some way. But I think we make a commitment to some sort of process that we say, okay, if this is just a sort of workshopped version of the general plan so that we meld these two documents together so that we are now focused on one document, then what we're doing is we're just creating a template. And that template is now in possession of the Planning Commission and our professional planning staff to make, and I do think they really are eager to jump in.
Oh, yeah.
And say, okay, you go through this and you make a proposal for a comprehensive general plan update, and then we will, I think that would be the right way to sort of clarify everything and reassure everybody that this is I just think there was so much confusion about the process. So they felt like they were being asked to approve a comprehensive general.
right, and that was unfortunate.
I mean, I watched the meeting.
Well, I think some of them stated that they recognized what our intent was, that it was, we were trying to merge these documents, but they didn't feel like they had enough time to digest it, and they saw a few things that they so they couldn't put their stamp on it. I don't think it did, or did they?
Right, so we're gonna basically send it right back to them and say, look, this is what we want you to look at. This is the combined document. And it's unfortunate it worked out this way because we had our executive director working with their executive director, which is Gary McGinn. And when the state says that it's their job to redo the general plan and leaves it in kind of in their report on how to do it, that's when they're going to work with their executive director and say, gee, Gary McGinn, what's the best way to redo or do a comprehensive general plan update? And so I think I don't have a problem with accepting the combined documents as a starting place so that we can then send it back to them and say, okay, here you go. And please do the comprehensive update however you and Gary McGinn feel is best, and you can consult with us if you want to, but do it by state statute.
But let's keep in mind that we're only this way.
I think we should do it in two steps. I think we should send it back to right away and request that as quickly as possible they sort of adhere to the spirit of all we're trying to do is merge the documents and get that to the point where they can feel good about it and send it back. I think they could do that probably within a month or two, and then do the more comprehensive update after that. I don't know how long that takes, but so we don't have to delay the more comprehensive update to get them to the point where they can put their stamp on it and recommend it. I think in terms of, even just in terms of the relationship with them, I think there's a lot of value to doing that.
Is that a motion? Because right now the motion is just to continue this and consider changes to the title and description.
Yes, I would make that motion that
I would second that.
send it back to them, and, you know, with the clarifications that we talked about, this is just, you know, try to get this back to us as soon as you can, as soon as you're comfortable with it. It's just a kind of an interim step to merge the documents, and then we'll get another crack at a more comprehensive.
So we have a motion, a substitute motion by Mr. Sewell, seconded by Mr. Hanley. And we're gonna have a brief discussion on the substitute motion. We start with Mr. Jones, that formulating otherwise.
Now I'm trying to decide whether to venture into the waters here. I guess I would say, I do want to say, I don't have any opposition, so I don't have any philosophical opposition to that proposed methodology if it works for you. So this is, I'm not trying to argue the policy here, but simply the legalities of it. The first is that there are potentially some downsides to doing that, which is they don't have to respond, right? I mean, in my view, and I guess I should back up and say that I vehemently disagree with the analysis of 403 that was put up by Mr. Sewell. And I try to put that out there delicately. But if you take that analysis of what 403 says, then nobody can ever apply for a text amendment change to the general plan. And that's clearly not the case. The only thing, otherwise, no citizen can ever apply for a general plan at the same time that they were applying for a zone change, because to do so would be to take away the fact that all amendments are supposed to come from the planning commission first. I think that's just clearly not the case. And if you look at 403, the only thing it says that the general plan itself, the original general plan, must come from the planning commission. But the only thing it says about amendments at all, and it talks only about comprehensive general plan amendments. It doesn't talk about any other amendments. And it just says that if, well, it says when the planning commission initiates a comprehensive general plan amendment, they have to provide certain notice for doing so. But again, all that says to me is that if they decide to do it, this is the process that they must follow. Nowhere in the section does it say anywhere to me anything about anybody else not being able to propose amendments. So I just want to be clear that to me, the normal amendment process has been followed, which is that someone has proposed an amendment. In this case, it happened to be council staff. And they did that at the urging of the council. The council was the one that said, we want you to go through and work on reconciling these two documents. And the council has done that at least during my tenure a number of other times when general plan amendments or zone changes have come before the council, and the council has said, well, we don't like what's being proposed, but we have another idea. We want to do a council-initiated proposed amendment to either zoning or the general plan. Let's send that back to the planning commission for them to consider. One second. So the only thing that this requires is that you have a recommendation from which you have. The recommendation is that you deny it, right? I mean, they've reviewed it and they've recommended that you deny it. Now, politically, there may be ways in which you can go back and make friends with them and get them to be more on board with the process. I don't have any comment about the wisdom or necessity of doing any of that. I don't think that it's legally necessary to say anything.
And I maybe would make another motion instead. I mean, I don't know. I could go either way here, but I'm feeling like because Cliff is not here and because this warrants a long discussion, and because at that discussion, I would like to have maybe Deborah Jensen come and have this discussion and sort of identify what it is that we're doing, what is it we're voting on, and what is it that's going to take place as soon as we finish voting on it, so that everybody's clear. I think we have to do some political work of building bridges, but I think if Cliff is here, I'd feel better about making a decision, because he can also provide us his perspective on this, and I would like to hear from the Planning Commission at that meeting. I don't know if you feel comfortable with that idea.
That sounds great.
I mean, we're talking 3 weeks, so we stall for 3 weeks instead of.
As long as we invite some representatives.
Exactly.
Cliff will be out of the country on the 10th.
So July
17th.
17th would be.
Yeah,
the
that's 3, isn't that 3 weeks?
earliest.
That 4? You're right.
Mike,
Mr. Harding, I'd like to comment.
Oh, okay, in just one moment.
my concluding comment that I actually, the whole reason I opened my mouth and I forgot to say this, is that my one concern about the proposed course of action is, given the current nature of the relationship, that you send it back over to them and the planning commission says, we don't think it's important to reconcile the two, so we're not even going to make a recommendation about how to reconcile them. So that's my.
That's not the way they're sounding.
Well, and that's great, but I was gonna say, that's my one concern about feeling, about the general philosophical feeling that all recommendations have to come from them.
All right, Mr. Winterton.
Yes, I think one of the reasons it started was because we had 2 documents were accepted by the council, voted on by the council and the planning commission. And they were going in different directions by the council members. And so the idea was to marry 2030 and the general plan, so that we could have one thing that we're working for. We weren't changing anything. I like Mr. Handley's suggested, it's just a template for them to go forward. And I love that suggestion. That's what it always was intended to be, that it was codified to adopt this document.
Okay, so we have a motion, a substitute motion. It sounded like we were talking about
substitute.
Oh, was that an official substitute motion? Okay, so we could.
What was the motion precisely?
I was
You talked about the
moving
implements.
that we have this discussion on July 17th with Cliff present and members of the planning commission.
I'll second that.
Can I request, because I think we can only have 2 substitutes active at a time, could I request that with that we continue this item to the 17th, we invite at least a member of the planning commission to be there, and then continue the one this evening to a time indefinite. What is the terminology for that? And then allow leadership to reach out to the planning commission. We'll work on that, and maybe we'll schedule it for the 17th, the evening of the 17th. We feel like that's how it's going to go, and it might need to be the one after that.
Yeah, because that week, that meeting on the 17th may decide what kind of a vote it is that we're making.
Right.
Yeah.
You're okay with that? Is the second still standing on that? Okay.
I'm okay with that. Last thing I want to do is send this back and then go, oh yeah, we're going to change this, this, and this. That's not the time and place to start changing things unless you're going to start the full comprehensive review. So let's come to an understanding and say, we're going to give this back to you. We're going to approve the combined contract, give it back to you, and then spend months or years or whatever your process is to bring us chapters or the whole thing and review it, however you want to do it. I want to empower them, but I don't want to get caught in a catch-22.
And with respect to time, only if there's burning comment on this. Otherwise, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? Indicate.
Yeah.
All right, that is unanimous. Excellent work. All right, so that brings us to the final item, which assume we are acting just as the municipal council to consider a motion to close the meeting. It's presented by Mr. Lewis.
There are some items that the administration would like to discuss in closed session. I've been briefed on those items, and they all do fall under the appropriate categories of litigation strategy or strategy regarding the purchase or sale of property. And therefore, it would be appropriate to close the meeting to discuss those items.
So at this point, if there is no objection, we will now adjourn by unanimous consent.
Oh, we need to move to close the meeting.